What's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and we're back here in person for 2026 Oscar predictions. Last year, it was kind of cool. We were like the first ones. This year,
we're the last.
We're the last ones.
We're the last. We are doing this late. We had to make it work around Dylan's trip to Toronto, so it gave us a little bit more time to wrap up last year. But we are here again talking about our predictions for Best Picture.
I would say to me, it feels a lot like last year. And I mean, like last year, obviously, didn't do the best. 1 out of 10 in these super early predictions. But like the year before, the Oppenheimer year, we both went like 5 or 4 or 6 out of 10.
Yeah, it was
most
like
people did
6, 7.
So
nothing
like,
flopped.
Yeah, and like last year, so many things seemed like flops ahead of time. Just some of them obviously we called, some of them obviously we held out a little too long. And that's kind of how this year feels to me, because there's a lot of films out there that I know, at least watching other channels, looking at Awards Expert, reading forums, whether that's in Discord or Reddit. There's so many people who are so high on films that to me seem like they're not really it. So I could be in for like a rude awakening this year, just like last year, of a 1 out of 10, because I was a little late to Conclave.
And
it's
late
not
to Nickel Boys.
That one was not the first episode, but then episode 2.
Right, yes.
A very slow switch over.
When we look at this early Best Picture, we can't just look at the directors and go, oh, that one, that one, that one. We have to look at the studios, because as we know year after year, studios have money to push things, and they have priorities, and that's what dictates, at the end of the day, what ends up in Best Picture. So when we're doing these early predictions, we wanted to break it down studio by studio and sort of think, what is each of their priorities? And that's a little bit how we're going to build our list today. What is going to have the money to get into the Oscar race? I mean, Anora spent, what, $18 million?
Like double its production budget.
Exactly. So we want to figure out what are going to be the films that have that money behind them. So you had an interesting analogy. I mean, this book just came out, new Hunger Games book.
So like this is super weird analogy. Hunger Games movies are never Oscar contenders, but like the subject of the book kind of fits with award season. Is there's so many districts, and you can kind of equate them over to the movie studios and distributors as well. Some of them are a lot stronger. Think of like Netflix, Searchlight, Focus, your districts
like the
1,
careers.
2, 3. And then you have some like MUBI last year who had their first ever breakthrough in Best Picture, and they could be kind of like District 11 and District 12 that never really compete, but when they're there, they make it known that they're in the Best Picture race.
And then there's those middle studios, the ones that are like, they're kind of always there, they're the scrappy underdogs. I think like A24, Neon, you know, they don't have Netflix money, but they're still competitors every single year. It's an interesting way to kind of think through the Oscar season, because we have these distributors, they do have track records, and we're going to go through each of those here today and talk about their full slate of films. Now, with that said, we're recording this right before CinemaCon, and so that's when a ton of release dates are announced. That's when a ton of distributors talk about their full slates of films. Some of the information we have here will not be up to date with what happens over the next 3 days. So if anything is wrong, we apologize. I'll probably write something on the video just to say, you know, we didn't know that Michael wasn't releasing this year.
Last year, CinemaCon really gave us that early eye. Going back to Conclave, the CinemaCon buzz was, hey, this thing looks phenomenal. They showed a trailer. Yeah. Everyone was hooked. So from that moment, that's when I made the switch with Conclave. Yeah. Last year, we recorded like the first week of March. This year, the very last day of March.
It's the very last day. We're going to start off our predictions with my win pick of the year, which is A24. I think A24 will take it this year. And just talking about their track record, from 2017 to 2024, they have had 6 nominees. There's only been 1 year where A24 has had 2 in. They usually have one priority above everything else. Right now, my win pick is exactly the same as it was on January 1st when I made that first video. And it's Marty Supreme, the new Josh Safdie movie starring Timothée Chalamet as a ping pong player. And A24 put $75 million into this. It is their highest budget ever. It's been described as sort of like Wolf of Wall Street level insanity. It sounds like it has great production values. It sounds funny and accessible and easy to enjoy for a wide audience. And of course, Timothée Chalamet in the lead role. I mean, he is someone who's had buzz around him so many times now. And I just think about that SAG speech. He wants to be one of the greats. He picks his roles very, very carefully. If Timothée Chalamet signs on to something, he believes in that project. It's clear that the studio is confident in it. It's clear, I mean, they're releasing it on Christmas Day. That said, Christmas Day, bad omen for Oscar contenders. But the difference is, this is more of a La La Land Christmas Day release because we're presuming it's getting festivals. If this doesn't show up at Venice, Telluride, TIFF, I'm concerned. But if it hits Venice, Telluride, TIFF, then it's the one to watch out for. In my opinion, it sounds like the big movie of the year.
My big drawback right now is just like, it sounds so fun. It sounds so much up all of our alleys. And typically those movies, at least this early on, aren't the ones to hit. And I hear the thing about the budget, I hear the thing about the cast, and it's something I really want to predict. My big thing with A24 this year, and just going back to that graphic from before, you see the films that got into Best Picture, the ones that are a little bit grayed out, those are the ones that ended up missing the nomination. And time after time, it kind of seems like A24's early contender isn't the one they usually stick with throughout the year. They usually tend to switch a little bit.
That is true. That is definitely true. I mean, going into 2022, if you were to look at their slate of films, you'd be like, oh, The Whale is the one that's the Oscar movie, not Everything Ever All at Once. And then Everything Everywhere All at Once premiered, and it was like, okay, this is the movie everyone's talking about. This is the movie. For Past Lives, I mean, they prioritized Zone of Interest later on down the road. But I think the difference with this is they're throwing so much behind this movie. We'll go through their full slate and just kind of compare and contrast. But I think for me, what I look for in Oscar contenders is I look for a director who's been sort of on the horizon for a long time and is just prime for a breakout.
Yeah.
And I think that both of the Safdies are, but this is the movie that's speaking to me more than Benny's movie, than The Smashing Machine. But the next A24 movie to talk about is one that you're really hot on.
I am, and it doesn't make sense for me to be hot on this, but I guess it's a lot of along the same lines of what you just talked about with Marty Supreme. It's a director who's been on the outreach, but hasn't really hit quite yet. But the biggest difference here is Ari Aster's previous films. Horror, and whatever you want to label Beau is Afraid. This next one, at least from what we've heard about the production and people involved in it, it's much more of a comedy. It's much more of a satire. I've heard people compare it to like a Coen Brothers when they're both together, not when they're separate. And the big thing for Eddington, I think it's the same thing for Marty Supreme. It's which festivals do they go to? And what is the reception at those festivals?
We're going to know in 10 days, basically. Is it at Cannes?
Exactly.
And the rumors are it's in competition. That's the rumor right now. Not to rain on your parade, this is all the way down at my number 34 on my list. I'm not feeling like this is going to be the one for Ari Aster, just because I feel like there can only be one Trump allegory movie this year, and I think it's a movie that we're going to talk about a little bit later, the Paul Thomas Anderson. Ari Aster has it in him to make something. I just don't know if it's going to be this one. And if it's at Cannes, the way I see it, I think it's Under the Silver Lake. Weird and out there and a bit goofy and strange. And that's the thing with Ari Aster. It's all, no matter what he does, it's going to be weird.
Maybe this doesn't win the Palm, but maybe it wins like screenplay, or maybe it wins an acting prize for multiple actors like Emilia Perez did last year, because this cast is stacked. We have Emma Stone, Joaquin Phoenix, Austin Butler, Pedro Pascal, and like just go to the IMDb. It's like 10, 15 people deep. It looks like a discount Wes Anderson.
You could say it's Ari Asteroid City.
So for me, that's one I'm willing to go to bat for this year, at least a year in advance. And like you said, 10 days, you'll see it, and you can tell me right away.
If it's there.
You'll tell me right away, hey, this is something, or no, get rid of that.
But that said, I mean, it could be the substance, right? Like, we have to keep in consideration that this is not the same Academy of 5 years ago. They're going to do things that we wouldn't expect them to do in the past. All that matters is if you have the ad campaign to get in front of them.
Exactly.
And that's the question. So I know I'm sticking with Marty Supreme as my A24 pick. I think you're leaning Eddington, but we should cover some of the other ones that they've got. Because we've talked about Benny Safdie's movie, The Smashing Machine with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. That's definitely in the cards. But that said, this is all the way down. For me, this is my number 45.
That's way too low, at least to me, because we talk about what looks good on paper. On paper, this is A24's push in my eyes.
On paper, sure. Yeah, an MMA biopic starring Dwayne Johnson trying to get an Oscar with Emily Blunt. It sounds really, really baity. But I have heard through the grapevine, a few different sources, I was told by one person that they were told that The Smashing Machine is nothing for the Oscars. Someone said that this is A24's strangest, most surreal, most like psychedelic, weird movie in years. It seems like when the Safdie brothers split, kind of like how the Coens, you know, when the Coens split, you can see Ethan Coen is the goofy one and Joel Coen is the serious one. It seems like with the Safdie brothers, the one who brought the humor and the sort of energy to Uncut Gems is probably Josh. And the weirdness and the sort of tension and anxiety, that seems like it's Benny.
At least from the premises alone, from these early reports about the movies, because obviously we've heard that Marty Supreme has these Catch Me If You Can and Wolf of Wall Street vibes, while Smashing Machine maybe is something like The Whale?
I would, because The Whale is a pretty straightforward movie. It sounds to me, I'm trying to think of like a good touchstone for it, but it sounds like maybe At Eternity's Gate. It seems really baity, but then it's like just a weird art film.
That's ultimately why I have it in that 10 to 20 range, is because I think it's going to be in the conversation for some other stuff, whether it's The Rock, it's makeup, maybe
I heard
screenplay.
Dwayne Johnson sucks in it.
You gotta have faith in The Rock. He's working with Scorsese. Scorsese maybe had seen something ahead of time.
Maybe.
Give him that. And, you know, giving The Rock the benefit of the doubt, because I think that more likely than not, I think The Rock will end up being someone who gets at least one precursor. And it's just like, do they all bite? To me, it seems like CCA would probably be the most likely. Oh, it's The Rock. Let's get him in there.
If the Globes were what they used to be, he would be locked a year out just because they want him at the party. I don't know, man. Like, it's just, it sounds so weird. And when I think about, like, it makes sense that Benny Safdie is the weird one of the two. Because, did you see The Curse? Yeah.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's so weird. And that's Benny. That's Benny doing that. I fully believe the reports that this is going to be too weird, too out there, a little bit too alienating. But the next one on the list, I have this actually a little higher than The Smashing Machine, but I know you have it. You're much lower on this one, and it's Sorry Baby, the Sundance breakout film, one of the only films that was purchased at Sundance, actually. I've seen this movie already. I don't see this as an Oscar player. I really don't. A comedy about sexual assault on campus, and specifically about a woman who is assaulted by a professor. It's actually very similar to After the Hunt, now that I think of it. It's like a comedic version of After the Hunt, but it's small, outside of like a screenplay nomination here and there. I don't see this being a contender really in any way.
Yeah, we both have this down like the low 30s, the high 40s, and like I think everything that you just said there really is why it's there. Is like it has the avenue, but we talk about studios, their preferences, everything like that. This sounds like every summer A24 movie that comes out that people are like, oh, it's really good, and then by the time award season comes on, it's like, why isn't this film getting buzz? We love it. It's because A24 has Marty Supreme, they have Smashing Machine, they have Eddington, they maybe buy something later in the year because they tend to usually do that at some festivals. So like this just seems one that is going to be great for like the indie circuit, and it will do well at some of those very small awards. Maybe regional critics will go to bat for it in screenplay or even actress, but in terms of like CCA, in terms of Globes, they're not going to care whatsoever. It's going to be one of those movies that I'm trying to think of a great comparison for A24, at least like last year. I would say like A Different Man if you take out the makeup factor.
Yeah, no, I mean, A Different Man is a great example. I mean, it did perform pretty well at the Golden Globes, right? It got into the comedy actor and it got the win there. But also A24 has actual comedies this year, where last year there are two big contenders for over in the drama category. Which is true. You know, we also have to think when it comes to the Globes, like where are their big priorities? Because they can give a secondary push to something else. But like, I don't know. I mean, A24 is better at juggling things than we give them credit for. I will say, they can get things into multiple different categories.
I agree. I think they're really good at when the nominations are spread out.
Yeah.
When they're in the same category, actor aside, but like picture, director, screenplays, that's when they usually struggle. But when they get below the line, like something that's just in sound, something that's just in makeup, or something that is more of like a production design player, or even Sing and Song last year.
Yeah.
Like they find their way into these. It's just the above the lines is where they struggle when they have multiple contenders, and that's usually because they switch halfway through the year.
So let's finish off A24.
Yep.
We've got a few more movies to talk about. We've got The Drama. Neither of us think this is an Oscar contender. I've got it at my number 53 on my list, but I know you're excited on a personal level.
This is probably in my top 5 most anticipated movies of the year because, while I didn't love Christopher Borghi's last film, Dream Scenario, I liked it. I gave it a 7. So, like, I enjoyed it. I just didn't love it. I thought it started off really strong, and then for me, it faltered a little bit in the second half.
Right.
But the reason why I'm so excited for The Drama is you look at this cast. Zendaya, Robert Pattinson. 2 of my favorite actors working right now. So, like, to me, automatically interested. Funny enough, this film shot in Boston, close to where I live, and it had, like, extras, like, scouting. Like, they wanted to have extras. So I saw a report of what the extras they wanted. The movie's going to be really weird. So, to me, it's going to be weird again. So I think that it's one of those where I can see the potential. You have the cast, you have the star power, where maybe if it does work for people, it could be a strong surge, whether it's premiering at TIFF or maybe this does happen to go to a bigger festival later in the year. But it's one of those where, like, I'm looking out for it, but I'm going to wait until those reactions come out.
And speaking of a movie that's going to be really weird, at my number 54 slot, Mother Mary. This is David Lowery's new film. I've seen a lot of people, specifically on Reddit, having this as their number 1 for Best Picture, saying this is going to be the movie of the year. I mean, it's been in limbo for 3 years now, right? We've been talking about this every year for 3 years, being like, when is it coming? And we've both been big doubters of this one the whole time, but a lot of that's because of the way that David Lowery talks about this movie. He keeps talking about it as like, oh, it's a weird one. This is a really strange movie. It seems like he is not confident in what people are going to think on this one.
The biggest thing that I've seen is from that same report that you're talking about where he's at that festival, at that screening, talking about the movie, is he's confused at what to do in the editing room. Maybe there are technical craft work. Maybe costumes, because it's a movie about a fashion designer. Maybe
costumes are probably the best chance it has. Song as well. I mean, because it's Jack Antonoff and Charlie XCX doing the score or the soundtrack for it. It's
one of those things where we talk about A24, like, a different man. They were able to get a different man into makeup, even though I would say at, like, bigger award shows, it wasn't a player in screenplay or acting. So maybe it's the same thing for Mother Mary, where Anne Hathaway never takes off, but the costumes, they're so eye-popping that they kind of work their way in through. And we know that costume design is a category that kind of goes their own way.
No, totally. It's possible that it could be. It just, to me, it sounds like no one knows how to sell this movie. No one knows how to pitch this. No one knows how to describe what Mother Mary is. I'm excited to see what it's going to be, but David Lowery is, like, so hit or miss.
He's the definition of a one for you, one for me type director.
Yeah, he does Peter Pan and Wendy, he does Pete's Dragon, and then he does The Green Knight.
I get why people are predicting it. It's got flashy cast. It's a director that a lot of people adore, and maybe it is something that it shocks us if it goes to, like, Venice, or maybe it surprises at Cannes here in, like, 10 days and it gets rave reviews, and this is the director who has that cachet that eventually breaks through. But for us at the moment, we're holding off on that.
It just doesn't feel right to me. It really doesn't feel right. And a couple of others that don't feel right. We won't talk too much about these. I mean, Materialists, we got a trailer. It's a lot of people had really high hopes for Celine Song's follow-up, but it's just it's a light rom-com for the summertime. It's gonna be a fun movie. We're not gonna knock it.
I like the trailer.
It's not an Oscar movie.
Yeah.
In my first video, people were criticizing me, being like, Materialists is way too low. I'm like, really? Like, it's a rom-com about a matchmaker starring Dakota Johnson, Chris Evans, and Pedro Pascal. Like, they're going for the money on this one. This isn't.
I'm shocked that the budget for this is lower than Marty Supreme. Chris Evans isn't cheap.
That's true. Chris Evans isn't cheap, but he gets to work with Celine Song, right?
Yeah.
He wants to establish himself as a serious actor. It's funny, in a studio breakdown, we're going A24, and the next one we're doing is films with no distribution, and it's because I wanted to kind of go for both of our Best Picture picks. We'll talk about this in just a moment, but while we get into the no distribution category, we have to talk about who picks up films. What are the distributors that pick up films? Because when we talk about all these movies, we have to think, who is going to get them? A24 always picks up movies from Cannes, from Venice. So does Neon. I mean, it's like a cliche at this point. Neon's going to buy something at Cannes.
Yep.
Neon always buys something at Cannes. Sony Pictures Classics buys stuff, and they don't have a lot on the horizon right now. This time last year, they didn't have I'm Still Here. They bought that in the summertime. Netflix buys stuff, although they buy stuff a lot less than they used to. Searchlight usually only buys stuff at Sundance. They don't buy stuff at Cannes. They don't buy stuff at TIFF. I mean, if they do buy stuff at TIFF, it releases in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, Searchlight, their slate is set by now.
The Searchlight factor is the biggest one here because the movie I want to talk about feels like it should be a Searchlight movie when we get terms of the award season stuff, but I don't think Searchlight's going to buy it. I think
feels more A24 and Neon to me.
That's ultimately who I'm going with. It's going to be Neon, and that's my whole big brain theory that 100% isn't going to happen. But like I said, I want to do some different stuff. I want to bring other films to the table. So I want to talk about the new Lynn Ramsey film, Die My Love. Jennifer Lawrence, Robert Pattinson, Lakeith Stanfield. The book, yes, it's crazy. It's out there. But it is a book that the people who do read it tend to enjoy it. And Lynn Ramsey is a director who has an atrocious track record when it comes to awards season.
Because she's not going for that.
Exactly. She's not going for it. And then you could say her last film with Joaquin Phoenix was in the conversation a little bit, but ultimately ended up missing out at the end of the day.
I mean, have you seen You Were Never Really Here?
I haven't.
Oh, it's fucking weird.
My big thing with this movie is Jennifer Lawrence. I think that her performance is going to get notoriety enough as that can. I think she is a prime front-running contender for that acting prize. The issue comes now is, what is the film overall? If Jennifer Lawrence is this strong, because at least from stuff that I've read about this movie, and this may be the complete wrong way of thinking about it, it's giving me a lot of Poor Things vibes. It has the strong acting, it's adapting a script in a new way, putting a new spin on it. The cinematography could be something if this film hits very strong, and ultimately at the end of the day, I want to take a big swing here, and I really like what has been basically your running thing of these Best Picture episodes is it needs to be from a filmmaker who hasn't hit quite yet. And looking at the ones on the landscape, this is the one that just has my hair raising the most, that gives me the biggest like potential signs, where it defies expectations, it's so strong out of can, and it ultimately runs the year even if people deny it for as long as possible, or it comes out and people are like, that's good, but it's not awardsy whatsoever. I don't think at the end of the day this is going to be just solo Lawrence. I think it's going to be 5 or 6 nominations, 7 maybe, or a 0 spot. We'll get into what my alternative, if I was doing it more of the conventional way of predicting, where you put like your most safe at number 1. I'll talk about that when we get to another distributor here. I want to take a swing here, and this is one that I feel like kind of the same lines of like Eddington, where I see the groundwork, it's just will it connect? And Jennifer Lawrence is someone, yes, Causeway didn't hit, but like when she hits, it's like Emma Stone. She's top of the category.
Totally. I mean, she could be a huge performance in this, but while you're comparing it to Poor Things, to me, this is Mother. This is a story about a woman at an isolated home in the countryside losing her mind. It doesn't sound to me like something, like a story that has a lot of bait. I want to see these filmmakers that are like weird, artsy filmmakers that never make Oscar movies, when I want to see them break into the Oscar conversation. Like, Brady Corbet wouldn't have been an Oscar filmmaker. I mean, Vox Lux wasn't an Oscar movie, but he makes a movie about an architect Holocaust survivor, and that's an Oscar movie, because it sounds like an Oscar movie. And Lynn Ramsey is a filmmaker very much like that, where her style is so anti-Oscar. And the closest she's ever been to Oscars was We Need to Talk About Kevin, which was very much like that was an Oscar-friendly movie. I think in the modern era, We Need to Talk About Kevin likely would have picked up some nominations, but you know, this isn't speaking to me as a story that sounds ripe for Oscars. It sounds alienating and weird, like all of Lynn Ramsey's other movies. Granted, I haven't read the book. I know the book, people love the book. It's this story that sounds like it's mostly about one woman going through a very internal struggle. It sounds a little bit like Night Bitch, in a way.
Yeah, it could end up being Night Bitch and end up flopping completely out.
Night Bitch was really, like, accessible. That was Mariel Heller. That was like the easy version of this story. If you thought Darren Aronofsky went off the deep end with Mother, like, Lynn Ramsey's insane. She's gonna do some weird, uncomfortable stuff.
Like I said, I want to take more risks this year. This is the biggest risk. We've done 2 categories of risk.
Yeah.
They're going to slow down from here. I've seen people, you have it at 30. I've seen people have this like the 50s, 60s range. I made these predictions a few days ago, figured keep them here. But who knows, maybe by the time in a week, things are adjusted a little bit, because this next film is one that personally I would love to see be an awards contender. But I think a lot of things that you're saying for Lynn Ramsey, I think apply to this film as well.
I agree with you, but I will counter that argument. My number 8 slot in Best Picture is No Other Choice, the new Park Chan-wook movie. And I think we're entering an era we've had such a shift in the demographics of the Academy that every year we're going to get more than one non-English language movie in Best Picture. I think that's just going to be the norm now. We need to start stretching what we see as Oscar contenders and who we see as directors that are primed for a breakout. We talked about Josh Safdie, we talked about Ari Aster, we talked about Lynn Ramsey, but Park Chan-wook is someone who year after year, whenever he puts something out, people are like, this is one of the best movies of the year. But it's not happening for awards just because they're not ready for it yet. Decision to Leave, I think, came pretty close. The premise is really interesting. It's a story that I think is really relevant, especially in the year where a ton of people are losing their jobs to massive cuts. A story about someone who is driven to the point of becoming a serial killer because they can't get a job. And they're trying to clear the field for themselves. They're trying to open up a path to employment by knocking out the other competition. I feel like that's a story that could speak to people this year. We've seen the Academy is open to films like this. And if this plays at Cannes, if this plays at Venice, it doesn't need to win a top prize. It just needs to be in that conversation for the top prize. I mean, The Brutalist last year didn't win the Golden Lion. It came second place. Emilia Perez came third place at Cannes. Mm-hmm. The Substance won the screenplay prize. We are seeing that just having an award from those festivals, getting the acclaim from those festivals, you don't need the top prize. You just need to be there. No Other Choice is a movie that is so exciting in terms of its premise, in terms of this filmmaker who everyone wants to see have a moment.
Is more so the comparison to Park's previous films. And I think that's something that we'll really talk in depth about when we get to Neon. But I think the biggest thing that's holding him back currently, and I think that Decision to Leave could have been a bigger player had people not been like, well, how does it compare to Old Boy? How does it compare to this? How does it compare to that? The biggest question for me here is this an 8 out of 10 movie? Or is this a 10 out of 10 movie?
But that's the thing that we kind of have to count on with these international movies is they have to be fantastic. Or they have to be Emilia Perez.
Well, the thing with Emilia Perez is upon release at Cannes, and you were there and you talked a little bit about this too. Yes, there's people who didn't like it, but the word on the street was, this thing is so bold, it's so crazy, it's so out there. I've never seen Jacques Audiard in this field.
You know what?
Ultimately got Emilia Perez to that untouchable status until we hit the nomination period. And I think that's the question here for No Other Choices. This sounds a lot like previous Park movies, at least in terms of feel. That's only on premise alone.
But like,
now, how is the execution?
In the modern era, I think The Handmaiden could have gotten in. I think Old Boy possibly could have gotten in. It was just a little too early to be taken seriously. At some point, it's going to be his time.
I agree.
At some point, it's going to be his time. So the question, looking from a distance, why not now?
And I fully agree with you. My thing with No Other Choice at this moment is the wait and see factor.
Yeah.
It's in my next in line, that first 10 out. It's just it's most likely going to Cannes, so we'll know really shortly.
I've heard rumors it's not done. We'll know soon. So the next no distribution movie to talk about is The Rivals of Amziah King, which both of us have kind of in our low teens range. I've got it at number 18. The buzz around this is really strong. People loved it at South by Southwest, but we're almost a full month out from its first screening, and it has not sold yet. And the question that I've asked a few people on our server who have been talking about this movie as a contender, I've asked, what is the last time that a real bona fide Oscar contender went a month or more after its premiere without being purchased? Normally, a film that a distributor sees as being an Oscar contender, they snap it up right away. The only caveat to that is The Apprentice, which did end up getting acting nominations, but there was the looming threat of being sued by Donald Trump. And so I think that is the one, you can put an asterisk there and say, well, that's the reason it didn't sell right away. Why has The Rivals of Amziah King not sold 3 weeks out from its premiere?
The only thing I can think of is the people behind the film are just asking for too much money from it.
That's the report from it.
And that leads me to believe that whatever studios are trying to pick it up aren't that confident.
Yeah, they don't see it as if they really believed in it. I mean, fuck it, dude. Kiss of the Spider Woman just sold for $30 million.
That's crazy. For Rivals of Zaya King, I see the package. You have McConaughey in his first on-screen role in like 5-6 years. Screenplay. You could potentially fraud the young actress into supporting actress and get her in there. Their song, their score, because there's so much music inside the movie. I've heard the cinematography and the editing are very distinctive.
I believe the cinematography. The director of this, his first movie was The Vast of Night, which is incredible. And there's one shot in that movie where they literally take the camera from one side of a town to another in one tracking shot on a go-kart. It's insane.
This is something that when we get into all these specific categories, it's in that 6 to 11 range in like almost all of them. For me, it really comes down to who's the distributor. Now, in a perfect world, there's one major distributor who, in my opinion, doesn't have real contenders on their team, being Searchlight. So, like, Searchlight would be like the dream destination, but the fact that Searchlight hasn't bought this so far tells me they're not going to buy this.
They don't buy things outside of, like, they buy things at Sundance, and then they don't buy anything
South by Southwest is Sundance adjacent.
Exactly. It's Sundance adjacent, but I don't know. The thing to me, it feels like with The Life of Chuck, right? Like, The Life of Chuck won the People's Choice Award and then sat without distribution for 3 weeks. What did that 3 weeks tell us for The Life of Chuck? It told us no distributor had room for it in their slate for that year. The asking price was high, and it was no distributor wants to release this before December. And so it was 3 weeks because it ended up being a next year release. And we could see someone pick up The Rivals of Zaya King and put it out next year. But that said, even Sound of Metal, which was purchased by Amazon and released a full year after it premiered at TIFF in 2019, they bought that movie literally a day after it premiered at TIFF. But we're in a weird era where things just aren't selling the same way. I mean, Sundance, normally you see like 20 movies sell right at Sundance. We're months out and still they've only sold like 5 movies from the entire Sundance.
And like the
slate.
winner of the festival still hasn't sold too.
Yeah. What's happening?
So, like, for the Rivals of Zaya King, the biggest thing for me right now is just who's the distributor.
Yeah.
That tells me everything I need to know.
And what is their slate?
Exactly, because, like, if this goes to someone, like we're talking about, whether it's Searchlight or Sony Pictures, that doesn't have the biggest depth, maybe I'll slide into a few categories, but if it goes to someone like Netflix or A24...
My most likely bet is I think it's going to go to Neon. I think when they lower the price, Neon's going to snap it up, because the production company that did this is Black Bear, and they work very frequently with Neon.
Gotcha.
Next film to talk about. This is one that I know a lot of people are hyped about because of the writing team being Brady Corbet, Mona Fastvold, who just did The Brutalist, and Lee, directed by Mona Fastvold. I'm not very high on this. This is my number 32, but I know you're seeing more of an angle for this than I am.
Yeah, for me, I currently have in the 20s, and the biggest angle I see for right now is, could this be the non-Wicked musical event of the year and find its way into a lot of those separated categories? I think about the Globes. You could see Amanda Seyfried in lead. You could see in the musical picture. I don't think this is getting like 8 or 9 nominations like I see some people out there thinking.
Dude, that's nuts.
But it's something where, like, the premise is interesting. It is intriguing. But like we've talked about numerous times on this channel, Corbet and Fastball, they're not Oscar filmmakers.
They don't care about Oscars. Literally,
so, like,
the only reason... I'm gonna rant about this. The only reason The Brutalist was an Oscar movie, it's the subject matter. It's an emotional subject. Anne Lee feels more like the Vox Lux type of Brady Corbet, Mona Fastvold. It feels more like The World to Come. It feels more like The Childhood of a Leader. Daniel Blumberg's score for The Brutalist, great score. But him doing a musical? Do you really think that's gonna be, like, accessible to people? It's going to be The End.
Yeah.
All over again. It's going to be Annette. It's not Wicked. It's not going to be an enjoyable musical. It's going to be a musical that's experimental and different. And it's not feeling like an Oscar movie to me. It's just not feeling that way. And this is like the quintessential... If I'm wrong about this, this is going in the next year video clip. But this feels like the quintessential... Everyone predicts this because... the makers of the movie just made an Oscar movie when, like, they're not Oscar movie makers. This is the white noise of this year.
The words out of my mouth. I was just going to say, this feels like white noise too, and that's why it's in that 20 range for me, where, like, if it is just that good, sure, can come back, but I need it to be that good before throwing it in there. And I think the biggest thing that Anne Lee needs to have is, wherever it premieres, most likely Venice, it needs, Amanda Seyfried needs to win the Oscar reactions out of it. The music needs to be catchy, because I know there's people out there who's, again, we're going to quit talking about Emilia Perez at some point, but there's people out there who say the Emilia Perez songs suck, but a lot of people who do enjoy the movie, the reason they do is because of the music behind it. And the music needs to hit. It needs to be accessible, and I think it needs to have that brutalist type response where it screens and people like movie of the year, movie of the decade.
One I'm a little bit more confident in. This is my number 22. This is Richard Linklater's Nouvelle Vague, which is very likely to play in competition at the Cannes Film Festival. This is a comedy about the making of Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless. I've been hearing reports from insiders in France who have seen early cuts of the film that this is phenomenal. It's hilarious. It is just a wonderful time. It sounds like a potential contender, but I think it would really need the French to rally behind it. This would need to be France's submission to the Oscars, which feels unlikely to me because it's written and directed by an American.
I hate to keep saying this. It's a wait and see for me. I see the groundwork. I just don't see the execution in terms of the awards prospects later on down the line.
It's just, Richard Linklater's one of those guys. He's one of those filmmakers where it's like he doesn't care about the Oscars. He just occasionally makes something that's good enough to be an Oscar movie.
This next movie is one I'm actually really excited to talk about because I don't believe it much for picture, but I think it has a really strong chance in screenplay and an actor.
Yes,
and that's Late Fame, starring Willem Dafoe and Greta Lee.
Oh god, Greta Lee is going to be so good in this.
And everything I've heard about this movie, from the premise, from the cast, this sounds like Dafoe is going to eat it up. And Dafoe is one of those guys he's in everything. He's in like 4 or 5 movies a year. He's just never the standout aspect of those movies. And maybe this is that Inside movie, whatever it was called a few years ago, where he was trapped inside, that people were like, oh, this is Dafoe vehicle for Oscars. But this doesn't sound like it's about like a poet who writes his work, but he doesn't get acclaim, and then later on down the line, he gets all his buzz and he has to grapple with fame and the attraction around him, and maybe there's a little bit more below the surface. I feel like this can show off all the sides of Dafoe that we love and adore. The comedic side, the more dramatic side. Maybe he goes a little crazy at some point, but like, I don't know. This is giving me like solo actor vibes that like we can't always get.
Screenplay too, because it's the second screenplay of Sammy Birch, who did May December.
It could be like Living, where it's one of those films that never is really real for picture, but screenplay, actor.
And the director of it, Kent Jones, his last movie got a bunch of love at the Indie Spirits. Kent Jones is really respected in the industry. He's a good friend of Scorsese's. He was the former head of the New York Film Festival, who, after leaving NYFF, he became a director afterwards. And so, he's got a deep love for movies. I could definitely see him being in the conversation at some point. And then we've got In the Hand of Dante, a film that last year in our first predictions, I remember someone in the Reddit comments being like, these guys are fucking idiots. They didn't even talk about In the Hand of Dante.
Here it is.
Here we are talking about it. I think this could be really good. I mean, it's Julian Schnabel, who, of course, Diving Bell and the Butterfly, At Eternity's Gate. He's been close to the Oscar conversation before. It sounds so good on paper. It's about Dante Alighieri writing Dante's Inferno in conjunction with the writing of the book that this is based on. It's a very interesting topic, but why it's been floating around for so long. It's a reputable director. Why has no one picked this up when it's been in the know for 3 years now?
Long Journey into Night vibes that people predict so hard the first year, and the second year they kind of waver a little bit, and now we're on like year 3, year 4 of these movies, and it's like, is it still a contender?
It's very rare that a movie that sort of sticks around is like in development for that long that we're like, is it coming this year? Is it coming? I don't know. Very rare that those movies are huge sensations. The only one I can think of is The Brutalist, which we've like been wondering, when is The Brutalist coming? When is The Brutalist coming? Since like 2021, 2022.
The funniest thing with The Hand of Dante is if it is real and we have Jason Momoa and Gal Gadot nominations.
Hilarious. More likely Oscar Isaac. I mean, like, Oscar Isaac is playing 2 roles in it. He's playing both the classic novelist and the modern novelist. And then we've got Martin Scorsese, who's playing his mentor. But, like, I would need to see this at Cannes. I would need to see this at Venice. I would need to see this winning one of the major prizes there, and it's not speaking to me as something that would win those prizes.
The next film, I think, is another one that has the potential to really excel. The biggest thing holding me back is like the premise of the movie, but it's called Sacrifice. It's from the director of Athena, a movie I know that you really adored from a few years ago. So and I remember you talking about the technical craft work to it, and the premise sounds like it's going to lend itself really well to text and crafts.
Yes.
It's about an actor who isn't really hitting anymore, and then gets abducted by this group and held for ransom.
That wants to sacrifice them to save the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Insane.
like the premise is so out there where maybe like it's a film that's so good it breaks through, and it's that one film that we've been getting pretty recently, because every year there's at least one film that just defies all the norms of what a nomination is and gets its way in.
You know what I just thought of? This can't coexist with Bugonia. It is the exact same premise as Bugonia, but flipped opposite, because Bugonia is told it's a kidnapping story about someone who wants to kill someone to save the world that they've kidnapped, but it's told from the perspective of the kidnapper. Whereas this one is told from the perspective of the kidnappee, which is what we typically expect to see that story told as. So, but this would require Bugonia to fail.
Which...
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that hopefully pretty soon. But I, regardless, am stoked for Sacrifice. I think it's going to be great. Slamming through some next ones. We've got The Way of the Wind, the new Terrence Malick movie. Is it coming? Who knows? I was hearing that it's ready for Cannes, and then I was hearing it's not ready for Cannes. So I don't know. If it's not in the Cannes lineup, it's not coming this year, I don't think.
Yeah, for me, Way of the Wind, once it is confirmed, I'll consider it.
I feel like we're not in an era where Jesus movies are going to play well to the Academy. It could be Martin Scorsese's Jesus movie. It's not playing to the Academy.
He should hold the movie for next year, and we have 2 Jesus movies with Mel Gibson, Passion of the Christ.
Passion of the Christ. That's why he's going to hold the movie for sure. Then we've got another Cannes movie with hot buzz. This is The Doctor Says I'll Be Alright, but I'm Feeling Blue. Maybe called The Sound of Falling. I don't know anything about this one, but I just want to mention it so that we can say, oh, we talked about this in the video, if it becomes the Cannes breakout. That I'm hearing. We've also got another potential Cannes breakout being Orphan, which is the new Hungarian film by Laszlo Nemes, the director of Son of Saul. And I'm going to be honest, if Son of Saul was released not in 2015, but like right now, Son of Saul would have cleaned up. It would have gotten like 9 Oscar nominations and won 6 of them. And it just so happened to release at a time where international films were not being taken very seriously. But we've also got The Secret Agent. You know, that's a Brazilian movie. Maybe we get Brazil 2 years in a row. Viva Brazil.
This one, to me, isn't as much as a picture player as maybe more so of like a Wagner Moore vehicle, where like...
Totally.
But like that really depends more so on the state of the race.
Yeah.
Is actor like last year where like we're struggling for a fifth.
Also, I don't have this on my list because I don't think it's going to be released this year. But I had noticed you'd listed The Wizard of the Kremlin, the Putin movie.
The biggest reason why I can see some angles for this is we just had The Apprentice. Was that a picture player? Not really, but it did really well in acting.
Jude Law could get into Best Actor.
Yeah, I think Jude Law could get in, and then I think that if the movie is getting, like, if it's really, really good, because The Apprentice, while I know that we both enjoyed it, a lot of people had some very strong issues with it, but The Wizard of the Kremlin is a better film. Maybe you could see screenplay come, maybe Vikander, or
the director doesn't give me a lot of faith, though. Olivier Assayas is not a filmmaker that I'm like, oh, he's gonna make an Oscar breakout. Like, no, he's never making an Oscar movie.
The biggest thing for The Wizard of the Kremlin for me is Jude Law. How good, how showy is that performance? And it's something that I think that people will be more open to embracing. Well, last year, the Trump movie had a huge roadblock. It's, do we talk about Trump? Do we address this movie? Trump will yell at us. Putin, he's not gonna care.
What's he gonna do? Yeah, no, I think Jude Law, if this movie comes out this year, Jude Law should absolutely be in the conversation. I just personally don't see it coming. I mean, they're just shooting it now. We'll have to see.
So let's move into our next studio. We're going to pop up with our track record here. We're diving into last year's Oscar Best Picture winner, Neon. They had been on a hot streak. Before that hot streak, though, you can see the clear line. They usually miss. But now they're typically getting one film, and they're really only pushing one film. Yeah,
in the last 8 years, they've gotten 4 Best Picture nominees, which is pretty good. They're batting 50%. And they also are really good at turning movies that might not normally be Oscar contenders into Oscar contenders, like Anatomy of a Fall.
And if you look at that track record that we just had up there, like, the times that they miss, it's like I, Tonya, where if it's a year 10, they're probably in. And then the other times they're missing with films that just aren't on the radar whatsoever.
It's also worth noting, all of the movies they've gotten into Best Picture were Palme d'Or winners.
That is the question here, because I have Neon getting in a film that I don't think is going to win the Palme. You have Neon getting in a film that
I do think is going to win the Palme.
Okay.
I'll talk about sentimental value, because I know a lot of people are doubting this one, and I don't see why, Dylan. I don't see why you're doubting it. If this was an English director who had just made The Worst Person in the World, that almost got into Best Actress, that did get into Best Screenplay, that was beloved, and a lot of people were saying was probably next in line for Best Picture. Let's say this is an American director who just did that. Their next movie, we're putting it in for the Oscars.
What hurts sentimental value in the long run
Right.
is people are comparing it to the previous one, and they're going to be like, well, it's not as good as that, so the buzz is going to be like a good movie, but it's going to be a little tainted upon its initial screening.
To your point of The Worst Person in the World's acclaim could hurt it, I would actually if it was in Best Picture, then yes, I would agree with you. But what we often see is when filmmakers get close to Best Picture, but they don't get in, that makes people want to root for them more. We see Guillermo del Toro, right? Pan's Labyrinth didn't make it into Best Picture, and people were like, that's one of the best movies I've ever seen. And then later on, The Shape of Water came out, and they were like, finally, a movie we can push into Best Picture. Sean Baker, right? People loved The Florida Project. And something I said, and a frequent thing I heard was, well, Anora's the best thing he's made, but Florida Project's my favorite. It's got a special place in my heart. The way I see it is like, people are gonna go, The Worst Person in the World was amazing, and this is great too. As long as it is good. And I guess the way I see it, this doesn't need to win the Palme. It just needs to get an award at Cannes, right? Like last year we saw 3 movies from Cannes, and not all 3 of those were Palme winners. One won the Palme, one won the Jury Prize and Best Actress, and one won Best Screenplay. If this takes director, screenplay, Grand Prix, Jury Prize, or Palme, I believe in it. That said, I do expect this to win the Palme. It is the obvious choice from a distance. It is a movie about the film industry with veteran actors that, like, Stellan Skarsgård has a role that sounds phenomenal. It sounds like a comedy that has heart. I have no reason to believe that this is not going to be a major contender next year. And I think, again, if this was an English language film, we would be treating it that way.
And I think I would agree with you in that aspect. For me, it's just one of those where, like, year after year, there's always these films that people are unanimously in agreement upon that this is going to be a top to bottom contender, and at least looking at the track record, more often than not, they tend not to perform that way. And this is one of those this year that is giving me those vibes, but I am ready for our end of the year video next year for this clip just to be thrown in there.
True.
It's a Middle Value has 8 or 9 nominations.
To me, this feels like early on in the year, I did not predict Triangle of Sadness. I put it very close, but I didn't predict it. Even though everything was like, Ruben Östlund could have a huge breakout. You know, this could be the one. He just won the Palme. This could be the one. Zone of Interest was the same. You know, I did put both of those in my Best Picture before Cannes, but I didn't put them in my first line.
Yeah.
But right now I'm trying to predict how I'm like, late in the year, what would make sense? And a Joachim Trier movie makes sense. They're going to do 2 international movies again. It's going to be the norm. Cannes has more power than ever. International bodies have more power than ever. This makes sense.
There's another film that Neon is probably sent to the Cannes Film Festival that to me seems so intriguing, and it's Julia Ducournau's new film, Alpha. And this one, from all accounts, is not going to be a horror movie. It's not body horror.
I have heard different.
And I will listen to that.
No, tell I want to hear what you've heard about this movie.
Basically, the biggest thing that's striving for this movie right now for me is the fact that this seems more of a grounded film. They're diving into a disease, most likely it's going to be AIDS, and how it affects a family at large. The cast for this sounds super intriguing. I'm a big Tahar Rahim fan, Madam Web fan, stand up. This is his vehicle to the Oscars. But on a serious note, this just gives me vibes that it could excel. Currently, it is right outside my Best Picture lineup. It's one of those where, like, I really want to put it in, but I have to grapple myself a little bit with so many out there original picks, because like this one seems to me like this could be a surprise major hit at the festival if it really hits hard, if it tugs at those heartstrings, if this family dynamics and if what the commentary is about the disease and how it affects those involved. Or also it could just be a Julia Ducournau film and it's just way too weird, it's way too out there, and people respect it but they don't adore it in unison.
This is what I've heard about the movie. It's not about AIDS. It is 100% a body horror movie.
Great.
And it's specifically about a young girl who grapples with rumors being spread about her that she has contracted a disease. And I don't believe it is AIDS, but I've seen people speculating that it's a werewolf movie, and that this disease that's being talked about is like a werewolf virus. Cannes wants it as the opening film, is what I've been told, but they're also grappling with, like, do we really want our opening film to be like a horror movie? So that's what I've heard, but again, we don't know much about this. The premise is really vague. We're talking about this the same way we talked about Anora last year. We don't know anything about it other than what the filmmaker has previously done, which is Titan and Raw, and like, from that, I think it's going to be gross because it's Julia Ducournau.
Yeah. I think Ducournau will eventually have her substance moment where
she
just makes a film that's so good, so beloved, that it breaks its way in. My reason for having Alpha in that range is because it sounded like it wasn't that, but now, this is why we talk in person. It sounds like it maybe is that.
The thing about Julia Ducournau versus Coralie Farjat, and I think what their sensibilities are that makes them different, is Coralie Farjat, and The Substance was such a big hit because it was, despite being a really gross movie, it was poppy. It was full of bright colors, and it was easy to laugh at. It was easy to enjoy. Whereas Julia Ducournau, I mean, you watch Titan, you watch Raw, those movies are just pure disgusting and uncomfortable, and it's meant to viscerally punch you in the gut. That's what puts me off with Julia Ducournau.
And upon hearing that, it puts me more off as well. So I guess we'll have to see if this has to go to Cannes.
We'll see
what it is actually like, but that's by its on the outside looking in. Another film that we both have on the outside looking in, but a lot of people do have in, is last year's TIFF People's Choice Award winner, The Life of Chuck. We talked about it a little bit when we talked about the rivals of Anxiety King. Took forever to sell. It sells, and they punt it to next year. And the question you have to ask is, there's actually 3 of them. 1, Neon. Look at that chart that we put up before. It's 1 movie every year. Is it Chuck? Is it Sentimental Value? Is it Alpha? Is it something that they haven't even bought yet? Your second question is, can it survive in May? I'd probably say no, but you can make an argument. But number 3, that's the most important question. We've seen a trailer. We've seen a teaser poster. We've seen the leak of the official poster at CinemaCon. There is 0 mention of the TIFF People's Choice Award. Neon doesn't seem to care about that. For them, this is a Stephen King money movie, and it's not going to be that big of a money movie, but for Neon, I could see this being like best chances like a Longlegs type, but more likely somewhere in between The Monkey and Longlegs, where it's like 50 million US.
Except it's not a horror.
Exactly, where it's not a horror, but in terms of like their box office prospects, where Longlegs is their peak 75-ish domestic, like 150 worldwide, and The Monkey's doing really good right now. But it's only like 25 million, 30 million.
I mean, Stephen King can have huge pull, but The Life of Chuck isn't a well-known story. It's not it. It's not The Stand. It's not Pet Sematary. They'd have to do a really good job marketing it. But the thing that I've said is, as soon as the calendar year finishes, it's not a People's Choice Award winner. That buzz carries you to December. This would have been an Oscar nominee if released last year. It would have gotten into adapted screenplay. It would have given Conclave a run for its money in adapted screenplay. I think it could have beat Conclave there. It would have knocked out I'm Still Here or Nickel Boys from Best Picture. It would have been nominated because the People's Choice Award is unstoppable momentum. But removed from that, there's no momentum anymore.
Speaking of no momentum, Boots Riley, that's our guy.
I love
award
Boots
season,
Riley.
though, maybe not as
Yeah,
much.
no, it would be a nightmare for Neon to have Boots Riley on a campaign trail. But that said, Demi Moore could be a supporting actress contender for this.
Maybe, but that to me reads more like she just got a nomination. Let's bring her back in.
It definitely does, but there's a potential for it because she's playing a villain role. It could be juicy. It could be like, if the movie's really good, she could come along with it. I'm not gonna say that's like a thing, but it's possible. I'm interested by this movie. I'm also very interested by Splitsville, which is a summer comedy that's coming out with Dakota Johnson. The director's just made a really good movie called The Climb back in 2019, 2020. This isn't an Oscar player, though. It's a light summer comedy. It's materialists. It's like the same thing, Dakota Johnson in both. But the real Oscar contender from Neon, Nirvana the band, the show, the movie. I'm gonna ride for this. It's not an Oscar contender. Not an Oscar contender, but it is my most anticipated movie of the year. For those who don't know Nirvana the band, the show, it is like one of the most ridiculous... It's like somewhere between Borat and like Conor O'Malley, like ridiculousness. It's going to be a cult classic for sure. But it's not an Oscar contender, so we should move on.
But you know who is Oscar contenders? Focus Features. They get in year after year. Look at this graphic. Almost every year they get a film with the one exception.
8 for 8 with one year that they had 2. But they don't do 2 often. But this year they've got 2 that could possibly be.
What I would say to everyone out there, and I know this is going to be really hard for a lot of people. Hamnet, Bugonia, pick one.
Pick one.
The other one, I don't know what to do about it, because like last year they showed we can do Conclave and get Nosferatu tech noms. But most of the years, it's one movie. Yeah. They're like what people like to say Neon is. One movie and forget everything else.
Yeah.
So like this year, you have the new Yorgos Lanthimos movie, you have Bugonia, and this is one I actually want to default over to you because you just watched the movie that this is based on.
The other day I watched Save the Green Planet, which is the Korean film that this is based on. It is a 2003 sci-fi comedy, and basically the director thought, what about doing a movie that's from the kidnapper's perspective? So in Bugonia, we're going to be looking through the perspective of Jesse Plemons as he believes that Emma Stone's character is an alien who is set to destroy the Earth. She is a pharmaceutical CEO, and he kidnaps her, keeps her in his basement, and tortures her. Think Saw meets Poor Things. It is a torture porn comedy. Does that sound like an Oscar movie? No, it doesn't. But it's Yorgos Lanthimos making a movie that is going to be so out there, so weird, with a cast of just banger actors. Jesse Plemons, Emma Stone, Stavros Halkias from Come Town. That's going to be interesting. But the really exciting thing, in my opinion, is that Yorgos isn't writing this, but it's also not Tony McNamara, who did The Favourite, who did Poor Things. It's Will Tracy, who previously did The Menu. That's not the thing I'm excited about. Who previously did Succession. That's not the thing I'm excited about. He was one of the head writers on the Onion News Network. And this is why I'm excited about this movie, because Will Tracy has demonstrated that he is exceptional at blending together political satire and absurdity. And what you need for a Save the Green Planet remake is a writer who really is adept at going back and forth tonally. And if the substance can get in as like a crazy body horror movie, I think that like a Saw adjacent comedy can get in as well.
So earlier in the video, I kind of said that Die My Love was my one, but there was another movie that was reality my number one, and it would be Bugonia, because if this film actually hits like all the Yorgos fans want it to be, he's been in the conversation twice now. The Favourite, he was probably number 3 or number 4. Yeah. He came up short in terms of, again, that screenplay win, because Green Book was just too strong. He didn't really get his flowers that season. Poor Things, honestly, would probably win a lot of other seasons. It's just, it went against one of the strongest winners we've had of our lifetime, so it really never really have a shot. So now we have Bugonia, which this is also his lease on paper. Like, yeah, banger
It sounds really, like, out there, but he's done crazy stuff before.
Exactly,
right?
And everyone doubted Poor Things, except us, everyone.
Well, we doubted it for a little bit.
But I guess for Bugonia, my big thing with this really just comes down to how is it received? Because it could be the same thing that I've said a few times in this video is, well, it's not Poor Things, it's not The Favourite, so it's kind of like a weaker, or it could just not be Focus's push, because Focus also has Hamnet, Chloe Zhao's next movie. Nomadland dominated the season. That's a very asterisk heavy season. Don't know how that movie does almost in like every other year of the last 10. I think it would be a really interesting question for that hypothetical. Now she's back with Hamnet, and on paper, this makes sense to be the Focus darling of the season.
Yeah.
It's adapted from a book that's got very positive Goodreads scores. It's about the creation of the play Hamnet, about William Shakespeare and his wife and dealing with grief. It's from an Oscar-winning director. Like, this makes sense, but also this kind of feels like the Blitz that we get every year. That is just like on paper, how can you not predict Blitz or Empire of Light or The Goldfinch? And that's kind of what I'm grappling with, is that there's just undeniable and it's in like Conclave, or is this like the bait everyone's going to fall for, like Blitz, and it's not a huge player. Maybe it's in the conversation for some other things. So I'm kind of playing it safe with Hamnet now, where I have it out in picture and director, but I have it getting like an acting where it's just Buckley, because from what I've heard, I haven't read the book, but Mescal's not really in it that much. I've seen people put him in lead. He's definitely a supporting. Lucas Zhao shooting the cinematography. Is he getting in every time? I know he missed for Zone, but that's something to have in the conversation.
Apparently there's a lot of close-ups in this one.
Okay.
Like, you really get to see every pore on Jessie Buckley's face.
So, I mean, that sounds good for her, but cinematography maybe not.
It's a Chloe Zhao movie, right? She does really scenic things. Like, she loves a sunset. She loves a golden hour. It's gonna look beautiful. Last thing I'll say on Bugonia, just quickly, I think it's really going to depend on how extreme the torture is. If it's crazy extreme and it like pushes it too far, then I don't think it's on the table. If it's more funny than it is gross, then I think it's in. But for Hamnet, what I'm hearing from some people that have been to test screenings of it is it's really, really depressing. And this feels like the type of movie that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, would have been Harvey Weinstein's push. He loved movies like this that were emotionally manipulative, that were super baity. It's an Elizabethan set drama. It just feels like Oscar bait of days gone by.
And I think the other thing with at least this focus dilemma that we have is Bugonia has a date, early November, so it's like right in that window where if it's going wide, it's good. If it goes limited, it can play that late October and then wide in that early November. So like it's in that range of where Focus is confident about. It's one of those things last year for Conclave that I chose to ignore because of the track record of the writer. Going with the stats here, I think Bugonia makes sense stat-wise, while on paper, maybe it's Hamnet, but also I think Hamnet has... It's that the little dangle they put in front of you to like tease you, but it's going to end up leading you down the wrong road.
The thing that feels really weird to me about Hamnet is apparently they never, until the last like 10 minutes, they never say the words William Shakespeare. That feels like the draw of the story, but you're avoiding it. That's weird to me. It just doesn't seem like the type of thing that they're going to go for, watching a woman grieving in utter misery for 2 full hours. That could be great for an acting nomination, but I'm really struggling to see it as a picture player.
People probably won't like this comparison, but listening to that, the first thing that popped to mind, it was actually Ana de Armas and Belong. Speaking of weird feelings, these next 2 Focus movies are ones that, like, I get why you would have them in the range, but at the same time, like, no. The new Wes Anderson, The Phoenician Scheme, as we've seen, it's been Budapest or bust, essentially, for him for the Oscars. So, like, I guess for this, score, cinematography, production design, put them in your 10, but not your 5. And then the other one being the Anemone, I think is how you pronounce it. The
Anemone,
the Daniel Day-Lewis vehicle for acting. His son is directing it, and they co-wrote it. So, like, to me, I sent you a text the other day when we were planning for this episode. I think the best case scenario for this is something where the actor is so respected that it gets in a week year. Is this year that week? We kind of have to find out.
The Phoenician Scheme, the Wes Anderson movie, it's releasing in late May. And that to me is like, they're doing Cannes and then it's in theaters a week later.
Yeah.
Like, that's not, it doesn't feel like they're doing an Oscar thing for it. Anemone, I don't know anything about, and I mean, maybe at most Daniel Day-Lewis, but it feels just like he's doing a favor for his son.
And then moving into our next studio. This one, when you look at this graphic here, is going to have a little bit of an asterisk to it because it's Amazon and MGM, and they haven't always been together.
They merged in 2021, I think.
So if you look at our track record here, it's 5 of the last 8, but remember, some of these films are not together with some of the other ones.
It's also worth noting that Orion, of those previous 5, 3 were Orion. And the thing about Orion is that MGM and Amazon, they're using Orion sort of as the label that's covering their films specifically about marginalized groups. And so I think it's really important when we look at Amazon MGM, look at Orion, because those are the movies that are going to be dealing with important topics. Both of us are surprisingly agreeing on what we think Amazon MGM / Orion's push is. Because we are really big on Nia DaCosta's Hedda. If I had heard myself last year say that, I would have smacked myself. I would have been like, you speak some goddamn sense. But right now, Hedda makes sense. This is what I'm looking at. We've got an adaptation, a reimagining of a classic play, Hedda Gabler, which is a Henrik Ibsen play. And when we hear reimagining, what I'm hoping to see is something that breaks away from the traditional narrative restraints, or that doesn't feel like we're just filming a stage play. I want to see a full reimagining of this story, and I think that we're going to get that. It's also being produced by Dee Dee Gardner and Jeremy, I can't remember the name of the other, but the Plan B guys, the ones that did Nickel Boys, the ones that did Women Talking, they produced this movie, and that has me excited. Also, the cinematographer of this is Sean Bobbitt, who typically does Steve McQueen's movies, and the score is being written by Hildur Guðnadóttir. There's a lot of interesting things here. Tessa Thompson could give an Oscar-winning performance. This is a role that can win an Oscar. A classic anti-hero, really complex character. And an interesting thing that they've done in this is they've gender-flopped one of the main roles, which could be a really juicy supporting role for Nina Hoss. Everything about this sounds really interesting, and I'm riding with the plan B of it. I'm riding with the Orion, and I think we'll talk in a moment about After the Hunt, but I just also don't really believe in After the Hunt.
Main reason I'm behind Hedda, I think, is the last part you said, is it's a vehicle for Tessa Thompson. She's someone, even before, when this film was rumored for like last year, she was someone that I could feel like has had that industry cachet where she's had a lot of great performances working with a lot of people, but she hasn't had that moment to shine. And this really could be her moment. And even if this isn't in Best Picture, this could be like her I, Tonya with Margot Robbie, where it gets her in for a nomination. She maybe even wins something, but it's just not further enough to get the film into a lineup of 10. But this time, we do have a lineup of 10, and it's seemingly so from a stronger distributor than what Neon was like all the way back then.
One thing that might hurt Hedda, January 16th, 2026, Nia DaCosta has another movie coming out. 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Being a January horror release, I can't imagine it's going to be amazing. I feel like it could hurt her to be like, oh, I've just made this Oscar-friendly movie, and now, in the middle of awards voting, guess who has a new horror movie in theaters?
I don't think it would be like that. I think more so the reason why they're rushing that is so it's close enough to the previous one. Hedda is one that we're both really high on, but from my research or looking at other people, at awards expert, a lot of people are going with After the Hunt, and it makes sense. Luca Guadagnino, he's back. The biggest thing that's drawn him back in the past is how out there his films are. Challenger is very much for younger people. Queer is very, very out there. And then you have Bones and All about cannibalism, and then you have Suspiria, which... how do you even go to begin to describe that movie? And After the Hunt, Luca has said is much more grounded. At least reading everything on paper, how the script was so popular in the blacklist, and that it got filmed, it's being made by a big Hollywood director, and it has all-stars in the cast. It sounds exactly like May December to me. And May December was a film that maybe could have been a Best Picture nominee, but due to the reactions, how they were a little bit skewed, it was like number 6 or 7, and like actress, supporting actor, editing maybe even also picture like 12 or 13, and then it just got a solo screenplay nomination. That's kind of where I feel After the Hunt, because I remember we did our Best Picture way ahead episode that season. You had read the script for May December. It's like, this script is amazing. A lot of people are saying about After the Hunt. This is a vehicle for Natalie Portman to maybe win again, like people are saying about Julia Roberts at the moment. Maybe it's wrong to compare a film that we haven't seen anything for yet to another movie just based off of the way it's being discussed, but I mean, that's kind of the nature of this game.
I've read the script for After the Hunt, and I will weigh in with that. May December is exactly what I thought reading it. It's a strong script. It's not a script I loved. Granted, I didn't love the script for Challengers either, and that was one of my favorite movies of the year, precisely because Luca Guadagnino added a bunch of stuff that wasn't in the script that elevated the film as a whole. And it's possible he does that for After the Hunt too, but it's so dialogue-driven, and the thing about the dialogue in After the Hunt is it's really academic. We're watching a bunch of professors at Yale talk like professors from Yale. It's not going to be fun and accessible in the way of Challengers. This is people sitting in classrooms and living rooms talking, and that's the whole movie. And it's also very morally complex in a way that I think a lot of people are going to grapple with and have challenges with. I could see film Twitter really being upset about the way that this handles certain things in this topic. Julia Roberts has a great role. She's going to do fantastic in it. Andrew Garfield has a lot to work with too. Iowa Debris, I think just that's not happening. In my opinion, that's not happening from reading the script.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about that, but before reading the script, I had this at my number 4 for Best Picture. After reading the script, I've moved it down to number 13. I think it's going to stay on the periphery. Like, it's going to be a screenplay contender, some of those acting awards, but I think it's just going to be a little too cold in the end to actually end up being in there.
And I think ultimately at the end of the day, the reason why we're both going with Hedda over After the Hunt is the fact of the nomination package. While After the Hunt feels very much above the line where it's screenplay and acting, Hedda, as we mentioned, has returning nominations in the cinematography department, in the score department. And then if the film is that strong, maybe it could pop up in editing. Maybe it's Nina Hoss in supporting. It's just, at this moment, before seeing actual visuals, Hedda is what reads to me more like the Academy player, even if Luca's my guy and I really want to see Luca eventually get his due at the Oscars because he had so many great movies. It's just, is this the one?
The other thing is I'm looking for more films directed by women, and I'm looking for more films that focus on people of color. We've seen enough of a shift in the Academy that we know we're getting some of those films every year that are directed by women and that tell stories centered around people of color. And this is one of the strongest contenders that I'm seeing right now. Maybe we'll be wrong. Nia DaCosta hasn't proven herself as like a filmmaker that could do this. I mean, we talked about filmmakers that are prime for an awards breakout like Josh Safdie or Joachim Trier or Lynn Ramsey even. Nia DaCosta did Candyman and The Marvels before this. That's not really like speaking to me as like this director needs this, but the project interests me.
Yeah.
But if it's not Hedda, I think that it's possible our Orion pick could be Preparation for the Next Life, which is a film I have at number 28. You didn't have it listed.
I haven't heard about it before.
I've only just learned about this. It's from the director of the documentary Minding the Gap.
Okay.
The details in the plot are really, really vague online. But it's also produced by Dee Dee Gardner and Jeremy Kleiner. That's the name.
There
Jeremy Kleiner. So it's Amazon MGM, Orion. I know nothing else about this movie. It's just I have confidence in those producers to get Best Picture nominations.
So we've talked about a lot of studios so far, so I feel like it's time that we go to those ones that we talked about up front being like the top dogs.
Yeah.
Because while Netflix has never won Best Picture, look at this track record.
They are the top dog.
The
of getting
only
in.
year they missed was their first year on the scene, and you can argue in a year 10, maybe Mudbound could have done it. But since then, every year, at least one movie, if not two, and some years even have up to 4 or 5 contenders in the race. And last year, we were like, oh, what is Netflix going to do? They have nothing. What do? They went to buy something.
Yeah.
They typically don't buy their major contenders. This year, though, look at their slate. They got like 5 or 6 movies. They don't need to buy anything.
Insanely stacked lineup. They are the one studio, because even Searchlight, who we say is the ultimate, there's only 1 year in the last 8 years that they've gotten 2 in. Netflix has 3 years where they've gotten 2 in.
Yeah. And some of those years you can argue that if it was a year of 10, they maybe could have even gotten 3 in.
Exactly, because they would have gotten Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and they would have gotten Tick, Tick, Boom.
Yeah.
Like, insane. They're so good at getting nominations. It's nuts. This year, they're stacked. Like, what do we go with?
And there's so many people out there that are kind of defaulting to the same two, but I feel like their slate goes further than just 2 movies, because yes, there's Frankenstein, yes, there's Jay Kelly, but they also have stuff like They Bought Train Dreams. They also have that Catherine Bigelow White House thriller. Bigelow is someone who has great cachet inside the industry, and Detroit, while it wasn't loved, it was pretty good. So maybe this is her return to form. It's just the one film of their lineup that we know the least about. So I feel like we both confidently have Frankenstein in, because you look at their schedule. Netflix is great about putting dates out. This has their prime award season date. It's Guillermo del Toro. We see him get in for films that aren't really loved, that don't have much nomination potential. At least on paper, Frankenstein looks like it could do what Nosferatu couldn't last year, of getting all these texts while also getting above the line nominations and getting inside Best Pictures. So this is the, and I said this famously with Blitz last year, but this is the one I feel the safest about in Best Picture this year.
The core thing with Frankenstein is we can't be thinking about it as a horror. This is an adaptation of the original book. He is primarily drawing from Frank Darabont's script that was adapted into Kenneth Branagh's movie, and some say butchered by Kenneth Branagh. We have to think about this as a gothic tragedy first and foremost. So yeah, Jacob Elordi's playing the monster, but he's going to be playing the monster not as the big green guy with the bolts that goes, he is going to be talking. Like a large chunk of the book of Frankenstein and of the Frank Darabont script is the character of the monster is really a philosopher in a lot of ways, and is a complex character with a lot of depth to him. So the way that I want to think about Frankenstein is just, this is not our substance parallel, this is not a horror movie, it is a gothic tragedy with a hint of romance to it.
If you take away the name of the film, I think this works perfectly for that elevated Oscar bait, where it's a period film, it's dealing with drama and grief, but then you throw in that little pizzazz, the Guillermo del Toro effect, where it's from an acclaimed filmmaker, and then you throw in the Frankenstein. Some people may be like, oh my gosh, monster movie, but like you're saying, it's not exactly that. So I feel like this is one that could be, I mean, most people are seemingly in agreement that this isn't Best Picture because of Guillermo, but I feel like if Guillermo wasn't attached and it was another director that maybe still has the industry love but isn't everyone's favorite director, that maybe some people would be even lower on it. But I feel like this is one that most people do agree is the main Netflix slot. It's just now, does Netflix get 2? And is it 2? Is it Jay Kelly, Noah Baumbach's new movie? At least for me, I know I'm a little bit different on this than a lot of other people. Baumbach is someone I think hit with Marriage Story, and I don't think that means he's going to hit every other time around.
I agree with you, but I've heard so much about Jay Kelly.
And the description doesn't really give us much to work with, but the thing that stands out most to me is last year we really didn't see this from Netflix, where they had their Best Picture movie, and then they have their movie that's really solely just for acting and screenplay. And I feel like if Jay Kelly comes up short in picture, this fits in perfect to their acting screenplay movies, where George Clooney, it's this comeback. We haven't seen him in a leading role in a film like this in forever. Adam Sandler, so close for Uncut Gems. He's been doing the rounds. He's at the Oscars chatting it up. Maybe this is time for a nomination. And then Baumbach, screenplay, original. That category always seems to like stuff like his. Now it's just time to give him more flowers. So like I feel like this isn't a great parallel in terms of the film's plot or their tones, but like I feel like this could be very similar to Lost Daughter, where it's showing up consistently in these 2 acting categories. It's getting in for screenplay, where it's on the outside looking in for picture, but breaks in at some places, but at other places struggles just because the other films are just showier and bigger than what it is.
So the comparison that I have for Jay Kelly is A Real Pain. That's 100% what I think it is. I think it's going to be right on the fence of Best Picture. I don't think it's going to end up getting in at the end of the day, but I think it's going to have at least one acting contender. Adam Sandler is really strong for it. Laura Dern is very possible from what I've been told. And I think screenplay is a guarantee for it. I've heard great things. And one of the things that I heard was specifically someone saying it is like A Real Pain. I mean, Searchlight almost had 2 in Best Picture last year and just missed out. And I think Jay Kelly's going to be exactly the same. The way that I'm seeing it right now is we've got Frankenstein, which is going to be really big on those tech categories and is in Best Picture. And we've got Jay Kelly, which is going to be big above the line, but just on the edge of Best Picture. On nomination morning, I think we're going to be feeling, is it in, is it out? We don't know. We don't know.
And that's the fun thing, because like you said, there's a tech movie, there's an acting movie. The next movie I feel like could be both if it's done right and it's received right, and that's Catherine Bigelow's upcoming film. I mean, Rebecca Ferguson, Idris Elba, apparently it's shot as if it's real time, it's going to be fast-paced editing, it's set in the White House. There's so much potential here, it's just we know absolutely nothing. And this is the movie, I think more so than anything this year, I want to put in Best Picture, but I have nothing to go off of to put in Best Picture.
Do you think that a movie about people competently responding to a disaster in the White House is going to seem plausible or realistic right now?
I mean, maybe not, but there's a lot of things they could do with it, and maybe they don't handle it the best way.
It's true.
It's
we don't
Catherine
know
Bigelow. She usually has something to say with a lot of her films, and a lot of her films in the past, while they were a little bit before my time being inside of award season, but doing some retrospective work, people seem to, at least up front, label them as something that they weren't.
We've also got Wake Up Dead Man, the new Knives Out Rian Johnson movie. This is going to be quite similar to the past ones. It could get that screenplay nomination that the others have. It could get some ensemble love, as they always do. Golden Globe comedy always seems to be on the table for these movies. The question is just, one of these days there's going to be diminishing returns for the Knives Out movies, right? So is it this time or is it another time?
This year will be really interesting because we have that new category of casting. How do they go about casting? Because I think one of the things that makes these Knives Out movies work so well is the casting of the ensemble. Everyone fits perfectly inside these roles. And I've seen people out there saying, well, casting is just going to be like editing, where it's going to be a 5-for-5 Best Picture overlap. Which very much it could be, but I feel like if we have an outlier, this is the perfect film for it, because it's not an ensemble nomination, it's because they're casting all these separate people. It's not like, Josh O'Connor, Kaylee Spaney, Glenn Close. It's casting all these people, and I'm assuming, at least going off the previous 2 movies, they're going to fit very well. So this is one that I don't really have in Best Picture round whatsoever, but I think, oddly enough, it could improve over the last ones because there's a new category.
Well, that's, I think, the thing with the Knives Out movies is they're never going to get into picture, but they're always going to be in the conversation.
Yeah, and I think this whole question of diminishing returns this year, and when we get to 20th century, there's a bigger question there.
Oh,
but,
totally.
I think for Knives Out, until a movie gets panned, it's good for screenplay.
Yes.
Because it's not the same cast of characters, it's not the same plot every time. While they're still trying to figure out a murder, every other element's completely different and unique, and essentially it would be original, just Benoit Blanc's still there.
The next one to talk about is Ballad of a Small Player, which both of us have pretty low down. I've got this at my number 35 on my Best Picture list. It's kind of weird to be like, we're really doubting Edward Berger at this point after he did Conclave, after he did All Quiet. But here's the thing. We could have seen the signs with Conclave because people loved that book. You know, you can go onto Goodreads and look at the source material. People love that book. Ballad of a Small Player has mediocre reviews for the book. It sounds much less plot-driven and much more character and tone driven than anything. I mean, it sounds like All of Us Strangers more than anything else. That's not speaking to me as a Best Picture movie. Furthermore, Netflix released their scheduled slate. They did not mention Ballad of a Small Player. So we don't know if this is even this year at this point.
It's the Berger effect, because I think he's very much someone, when we get a few more years on the line, he's going to be very much compared to like Ridley Scott, where his films are as great as their screenplays are. With a Ballad of the Small Player is going to be, is this script nomination worthy, or is this script just kind of whatever, like the books reviews on Goodreads are? And I feel like that is going to be the new rule of thumb with Berger as he continues to play inside this award season race, because he had done movies before All Quiet, but they weren't really ever on the radar for anything. So now I feel like I said, it's going to be like the Ridley Scott comparison. Like, well, if the screenplay is great, the film can work too. But if not, then maybe this film still finds its way to like an acting or something. Or maybe his next film isn't a picture player, but it's got those technical elements that Conclave and All Quiet had. But this one, I agree with you. Yeah. This is very far down my Netflix list.
The signs are just not pointing in its direction at this point. We've also got Train Dreams. This is the new Clint Bentley movie that they purchased out of Sundance. But it's an indie. It's an indie. Maybe Indie Spirits, maybe Gotham's, but I'm just going to say I don't think this is really going to be a contender at the end of the day. I think this is just release date fodder. They're going to shove this in early October, late September, and it's just going to be there to pad out their schedule.
The best case scenario for this is something like last year with His Three Daughters, which wins some very early prizes. It shows up, like you said, on the indie circuit, but in terms of big televised awards, it's nowhere to be seen.
So the next one is another total powerhouse, Warner Brothers. In the last 8 years, they have had 9 nominees. They have not missed 1 year, and in 2021, they had 2 nominees with King Richard and Dune. So they have done extremely well. And this year, it looks like they only have one thing.
That's the big question with Warner, is they really only have one movie unless you want to play semantics with some things. Because, like, they have the new PTA, one battle after another. Is this their only movie because they're so confident in it, or is it for other reasons? Because Mickey 17 came out, we know that's not an awards player. The Bride fled till next year.
Which and they pushed it, so it's like they weren't confident in it.
Sure, I see some people out there being like, well, what if they bring up Wuthering Heights? That's coming out in January. What if we rush that? But no, even if they do rush it, I don't think that's going to be a thing. So, like, all they have is the new One Battle After Another, and after reflecting, I do think this film is being vastly overpredicted, overhyped. People are going strictly off of its PTA, it's his time, he's got to win. They're winning 3-4 above the line categories.
That's
They're saying
crazy.
It's going to be a sweet.
Crazy.
But
it's the same vibe as people doing that for Killers of the Flower Moon, or The Irishman, or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, so I've originally I had it out, but after reflecting a little bit, I think due to this track record of Warner Brothers, they have nothing else, and I still think the film is going to be positively received. I don't think it's going to be like a blitz where it's just a dud upon release. So it is now in my Best Picture 10, but it's on that back half of the 10 where I don't think this is going to be in win contention, but I think it's going to be the Warner Brothers special, essentially. How they have the film in, it's never in winner contention outside of maybe its initial release date like Barbie had, sort of thing, or even Dune Part 2 last year. But when we get time to the actual meat of the season, it's just that 6-7 contender like Elvis or King Richard or countless other movies from that graphic before, where they're great at getting their one film in,
and Tex as well.
And Tex as well. But like if I expanded that graphic out a little bit to show their other contenders that year, they usually have a big flop. And like they had Joker, they had Color Purple, they had Don't Worry Darling, and the list goes on and on and on. And I mean, like, Warner just doesn't have anything else this year. There's another movie. It's F1. Not going to sugarcoat it. We'll talk about that when we get to some other studios, because I would consider that an Apple release.
Oh, I'm considering it Warner Brothers.
Okay.
Because they're doing the theatrical.
Yeah, and that's just a question, who's going to handle the awards campaign? Because, like...
And we don't know, I guess.
Exactly, we don't know, because if you go to, like, the distribution stuff in the past, the FYC page, Apple handled Killers of the Flower Moon.
That's true. It wasn't Paramount.
Yeah, Napoleon was handled by Sony. So, like, I think that's the big draw for F1. Is Apple taking it themselves? Or are they shilling it off? Because I think if they're shilling it off, that probably means that's not really real. Where if they're keeping it, maybe they...
But does it? Because, I mean, they kept Blitz for themselves.
They did keep Blitz, but they also kept... Yeah, I guess... Apple's a very weird one to track.
Yeah.
They either hit strong or they just flop.
And it's hard to say. Like, we don't know where this is going to land. So, here's my thing on One Battle After Another. I feel like PTA is... such a big filmmaker that people are always going to predict to be a Best Picture winner, and it's never going to happen because throughout his entire career he's always going to be competing against There Will Be Blood. Anytime a new movie comes out, it's going to be compared to, is it There Will Be Blood? But I think he's going to continue to get Best Picture nominations. But to me, people predicting this as the Best Picture winner, predicting Leo to win, predicting Sean Penn to win, predicting screenplay, director, sweep for Paul Thomas Anderson, it just says to me that every single year, we get one of those, and this is not meant to degrade Paul Thomas Anderson, we get a film bro director that everyone predicts to win Best Picture right at the start of the year. And the only time that has actually happened at the end of the year is Oppenheimer.
And the funny thing was, that year, Oppenheimer wasn't even the early frontrunner. It was Killers.
Yeah.
The majority of people went with Scorsese and said, hey, this film we've heard about for so long, this will be a thing.
Yeah.
And that was my scare with One Battle After Another for the last, I guess you could say, 2 months, or ever since it became time to think about next year, is the fact that everyone was going for this upon the start of the season. And year after year, those movies either struggle so much where they're in the bottom 5 of Best Picture, or they just miss out on the nomination altogether. Because if you go back for the last 5 or 6 years, the only movie that went coast to coast in terms of getting that Best Picture nomination while being the frontrunner would be Mank and would be Killers of the Flower Moon. But I think with the Warner Brothers stat, with the extra stuff behind it, I think that this should be good to happen out this year.
I don't know, like, I wouldn't say that those movies that everyone expects at the beginning of the year frequently miss Best Picture. They just don't win at the end of the day. The only circumstance where I see this missing Best Picture altogether, although I don't see it having any chance to win Best Picture, the only circumstance where it isn't in Best Picture is if it's a massive financial flop. And I think there's a pretty big chance that it will be. I mean, they spent $130 million on this. That means plus marketing. They're going to spend over $200 million. Is a PTA movie going to make $200 million plus in the box office?
PTA movie hasn't even made $100 million plus yet.
Like, I think 70 is where he topped off with There Will Be Blood, and that was a huge Oscar season contender. Imagine this comes out, makes $30 million total domestic. And it's, like, known as... this is toxic.
I don't think it will go that low. I still think the floor for this, at least domestically, would be like Killers, that 50-60 range. Just
but that's still a disaster.
It still isn't great. And I think that the end of the day is going to be is, how does Warner Brothers treat award season when they don't have a guaranteed movie, assuming the worst case scenario for One after another? Are they going to just give up and bow out the season? We've never seen them do that before.
They've never done that.
But they've never been in a situation where their one movie is a bubble contender.
Yeah.
Because even years where they have weaker movies, they're still not in that 10 range. Like even King Richard and Dune, while they weren't winning Best Picture, they were 5 and 6 probably.
Yeah, they were solidly in there because they had guaranteed categories to win. And I do want to talk about F1 here. I know that you're thinking of it as Apple. I just want to consider it Warner because if One Battle After Another is not their thing, it's F1. Here's the thing with F1. When we think about movies that have a guaranteed win or something like they're a front runner this far out for an award, you look at something like Avatar, where you go, oh yeah, that's locked for visual effects, or Dune, that's locked for visual effects. Usually, if something's that strong in a tech category, that far away, then it's going to be pretty solid for a picture as well.
And
this could be for sound.
And using that logic, last year, a lot of people did have Wicked as either number 1 or number 2 in costumes or production. They're like, oh, it's not serious for Best Picture. And what happened another day? Best Picture. And I think F1 is a film that's getting a little bit of an unfair treatment, at least up front. It has a IMAX early screening date that already dropped, and it almost sold out worldwide on that date.
That's nuts.
one day, so maybe it's just all the people who were really excited for it went right away. But like that shows me there is hype, there is anticipation
also
for
European.
This. Mm-hmm.
Like when we think about movies that are going to appeal to dads and the Europeans in the Academy, this is going to do crazy numbers in theaters.
Yeah, and I think this could be the example of that movie everyone just doesn't take serious, and maybe it still misses at the end of the day, but it's going to be right there in the race because, like you said, sound, editing, and maybe even cinematography are
Claudio
very
Miranda
strong.
just missed out for Top Gun.
He did.
They could see an opportunity. I mean, it rarely happens like that, but they could see an opportunity to give him a nomination.
But I think the biggest difference between Top Gun and this is the whole sequel bias that they always have, and even though it wasn't the same cinematographer or didn't have the same visual feel at all, there's that blah 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 with it. But this is completely new. They're putting it inside of race cars. We've seen the trailer. Even if you think that trailer looks mid, you have to admit the sound in the movie theater and the cinematography look really good. So I think at least this day, you should have F1 in at least 2 categories. You can go as high as 5 by adding in cinematography, maybe score, visual effects, depending on how they feel about visual effects, because they may pull the Maverick around and be like, it's all real. And then there's also Best Picture. I don't think Kaczynski is going to be a thing. I mean, I have this in the 20s, but now that we're talking here, I do want to move this higher up.
Well, that's the thing. Like, the thing that I'm feeling is, I know this is going to be a financial sensation.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is going to be in sound. I'm pretty sure it's going to be in editing. I'm pretty sure it's going to be in cinematography. And if it's getting those tech nominations and it's going to be a box office sensation, and if I am thinking that One Battle After Another could be a massive fucking flop, then F1 feels like it's right there, ready to walk in.
Honestly, by the time this video comes out, I may make a switch and have this in, because now that we're talking about it here, it's selling me, especially with the point that you made about when you have something that feels so strong a year in advance. It's one of, like, last year, I felt so great about Wicked, but I left it out due to the buzz around it, and be like, oh, the trailer looks mid. People said about F1 as well, but like something about that movie felt so good to me. That was my 11 last year, and do I want to make that same mistake again this year? Well, F1, I don't feel as great about it as I did Wicked last year, but I see the vision. I guess just looking at the other Warner Brothers contenders, because again, they don't really have much else on their slate, and we're stretching by including F1 here. Mickey 17, it's come out.
Yeah, it's not happening.
Nothing.
72 for me.
I would say don't even include it on your long list mentions. Superman, I get some people really want to see that happen, but
it's possible if it's a huge financial sensation and people are saying, oh, it's revitalized the superhero genre and it's like completely brought this dying genre back to life. If that's the case with Superman, then sure. But at the same time, I feel like people just have a burnout of superhero movies at this point. It doesn't seem to me like something that needs to happen. And then just to mention 2 horror movies here, because I think both of them have interesting angles. Weapons by Zach Kreger. I mean, they moved it into August because they're confident in the movie. They know it's not a January release. There's great buzz. There was a huge bidding war for it. Maybe if this is like a big sensation, we could get like what Get Out was a few years ago, where it's just the horror movie that no one expects to be a breakout that is. Sinners, I think, is also worth mentioning because, again, it's got that sort of, it's a sundown town. That's the whole premise, is that they're like really going into that. It's just an early release, which makes me worried.
It makes me worried as well, but speaking of Warner, they're great at text. This is something where if the reviews are really outstanding, maybe it's not a picture player, but like cinematography, score, production design can kind of play in that like 5 to 10 range for the rest of the season.
They have the potential to be those cultural sensations. And when we think of Warner Best Picture players, they need to be big blockbusters that really speak to the masses. And so that's what we're looking for here. And that's a little bit why I'm worried with One Battle After Another, because I don't think it's going to speak to the masses.
I hope the movie's great, but I don't want to be upset like, oh, it's not in Best Picture next year. I was like, oh, I can't even put it at number 10.
At this point, I'm just thinking PTA is too big to fail.
Yeah.
But that could be a big mistake.
But let's move into Universal, because we talk about Warner being big blockbuster films. Universal, as of late, they've been doing the big blockbuster films.
Yes. Over the last 8 years, they've had 6 nominees for Best Picture. And this year, they literally only have one thing on their slate. There's no split attention.
I mean, that's when they work best, because Oppenheimer, only push. Wicked, only push. Here, only push.
Well, they wanted to push Wild Robot last year.
Well, they didn't really try that hard.
But this year, they've just got Wicked for good. And there's been a lot of talk with this one.
is it going to live up to what the first one did? I mean, we've got someone in our comments every video being like, it's gonna sweep, it's gonna sweep, it's gonna sweep. And I don't think either of us are going that far, but we're both very confident it's going to perform as well as the first one. They filmed it back to back. They edited at the same time. We have no reason to believe this is going to be a drop in quality from the first one, other than the show itself. All of the great songs, except for Good, are in the first half of the show. So the second act is a little bit thinner. But otherwise, I mean, it's going to have same tech support. It's not going to win all those tech categories, but it's going to have all the nominations that the first one had.
I think the big thing with Wicked and the read this year is what we saw when Wicked first happened last year. And this isn't to call anyone out. This is just how I've been reading things so far. The people who are slow to get on the Wicked train are the ones saying it's not happening next year. The people who immediately were like, nah, Wicked, it's good. It's got the tech support. It can get acting support. It's in picture. Those are the people who are on board with it a year out in advance. Because I think, yes, there is the potential to lose nominations. Editing could go away.
Yeah.
Score most likely is going away. That's still 8 nominations. Then you added 1 or 2 original song nominations. That's 10. And I think really the only way, and maybe these are final last words, but like Wicked for Good's path to not a Best Picture nomination is just being panned. It's a Joker 2 situation, but that's my point, is why would it be? Joker 2 took years off in between filming. It already had...
And there was no established material.
Exactly, and it had so many people out to get it before release.
Yeah.
Wicked for Good, the only people who are really against it already are the people that aren't open to musicals.
And didn't like the first one. And what I keep saying, and what I've been saying since the beginning... It's the Happy Meal toy. I remember people being like, Gladiator 2 is going to happen and Wicked is nothing.
Yeah.
And it's that's a girl's toy. And this is for men. This is for manly men. I hate that attitude around Wicked. But it prevailed through the season. People kept being like...
And it's happening this season too.
It's a dumb movie for girls.
Because,
like, fuck off, dude. Like, come on.
Because, like, we'll talk again when we get to 20th Century. There's 2 sequels to Best Picture nominations. And I just find it very weird, people who just keep Avatar and drop Wicked.
Exactly. Thank you. That it makes no sense.
And I think it works in the reverse, too. Just keeping Wicked and dropping Avatar. I think that both of these franchises, Avatar, I guess more so than Wicked, has shown people will show up. They will care, and I think the biggest thing, and this applies both to Fire and Ash and For Good, they were filmed with the previous one. It's the same creative team, it's the same editing team, it's the same visual team behind the camera. Why would the quality be worse to not come back around this time?
We'll talk about Fire and Ash soon, so I'll save my thoughts for then. But the thing that I've said before is that, like, Act 2 is not as strong as Act 1. And I actually this week went and rewatched a bootleg of Wicked just to see Act 2 again. I haven't seen the show in quite some time, so I was, like, foggy on the details. And what I realized, so the entire show was 2 hours and 20 minutes. Act 1 was an hour and 20. And they turned that into a 2-hour 40 movie. Act 2 was 1 hour exactly. And so I expect they're going to add an hour to an hour 20 minutes. So I think that Wicked for Good is going to really solve a lot of the problems with Act 2 of the show. Because the main issue that I have with Act 2 is how rushed it is. So much happens, but it's a short act. Rushing from action to action. Every single scene was like a new major event happened. And watching that on stage is exhausting, in my opinion. But what I liked about Wicked the movie, in comparison to the stage show, is it gave stuff room to breathe. It gave you time to get to know the characters instead of just rushing from beat to beat. And if you do that with this one, if you really allow the world time to breathe, it's going to be spectacular. We could see Ariana Grande win. We could see Cynthia Erivo get very close to winning. I don't think she will win, but she could get very close. We could see a nomination for Jonathan Bailey, and frankly, we're going to talk about casting later. I think this is winning casting. Normally, I would say in a sequel, it's not going to win, but because it's the first year of the category, I think that they're going to want to celebrate the casting work for the two movies together.
I completely agree. I think that the fact that it's not just casting for Wicked Part 1.
Yeah.
This is also casting these people to work inside this movie, and not going into spoilers, but almost every major character is a little bit, if not a lot, different than how they were in Part 1. There's a lot of character progressions, a lot of, well, maybe you didn't love how they acted in Part 1, but now watch what they can do here when they have a lot more screen time, and a lot more things
genuinely,
to do.
Grande has more to work with here than she does in Act 1.
Mm-hmm.
And she came close to winning last time against Zoe Saldana. Maybe not close to winning, but it felt like for a moment she could have. She has more to do in Act 2. I mean, there's no popular or whatever, but like she's grappling with some serious emotional stuff going on.
I honestly think that would be better for the win, because you're not focusing on them singing, you're focusing on the dramatics of it all. And I think that's one of the reasons why Saldana ended up winning the first time is, while yes, she sings and dances Amelia Perez, she also has a lot of crying scenes, a lot of yelling scenes, something that Grande really didn't have in Part 1, but she's gonna have, and for good.
Yes, absolutely. So to me, I don't get when people at this point, and maybe this will be our Joker montage next time, but I don't get when people are like completely off on Wicked for Good, because there's no reason why this would not perform well. Mm-hmm. It's established material. We know what they're going to do with it. This is genuinely one of the most known contenders that we have at this point.
So next up, we get to dive into one of the most consistent studios in terms of getting nominations, and that is Searchlight. Look at this graphic here. They got a movie in every single year of the modern era since Netflix came into the party, and one year they got 2 films in.
Yeah, the last time they weren't in Best Picture was Jackie in 2016, and aside from that, it's every year till like 2002 or something.
And I mean, you can make an argument that Jackie would have been in the year of 10. The thing that we consistently see with Searchlight is they make contenders that other people don't believe in happen. The issue with Searchlight this year is, what is their contender? Because I think we both had agreed upon, if we recorded this back at the start of March, it was The Roses.
Yeah. We would have said The Roses because of Tony McNamara.
Yeah, Tony McNamara, he's coming back around. Cumberbatch, Olivia Colman, Jay Roach, yes, he hasn't hit with a nomination, but he's been close twice.
He's been close, yeah. I mean, I don't think it was close for Trumbo, but for Bombshell, very close.
And that movie on paper, yes, it's an adaptation of an original film, but McNamara works wonders, and probably would have changed the source material, or probably did change the source material up a lot. So the reason to drop that in August really doesn't make sense to me.
No sense, yeah.
Now, we could have a Poor Things situation where Poor Things was slated for late August, early September, and then they moved it once it starts screening to
That
people.
was why I doubted Poor Things back then, because I was like, why is it
in August,
September?
So like that is my one holdup for The Roses. I'm not banking on that happening twice again, because Poor Things had that date well ahead of time.
Yes,
The Roses just got that date, and with CinemaCon happening this week, it's not like they're gonna backtrack on that a week later. No. The Roses is one where I really wanted to predict it, and I was really high on it. I had it in like every above the line category, had to get in for score, had to get in for editing, but now it is a nothing burger for me. And I think the reason why they slated that for August is they believe in something that's coming in later this year. The question is, we both have different movies of what they believe in later this year.
Let's first talk about your movie, Is This Thing On?, which I'm just going to say right out the gate, I don't think this is releasing this year.
And I don't know if I buy it releasing this year either, but I think there's some sort of inkling that the fact that they pushed The Roses, which on paper, even if it's not an awards player, why August? There's some reason why they're clearing their slate for later in the year.
The original movie made like 200 to 300 million at the box office. They might be thinking of it as a blockbuster.
They could be. I just feel like that type of movie would work better around like September, or even hold it to like
October would be good for it too.
And I mean, in worst cases, if you really want to hold it for money, you could hold it to like Valentine's Day next year, but like
oh god, that's an evil Valentine's Day movie. But here's my reason that I don't believe Cooper will be done. They're shooting it right now, right? Cooper takes his sweet fucking time in the editing room.
He does.
Maestro took 2 years from shooting to finish.
The biggest difference I think between Maestro and Is This Thing On is the size of the film.
The scope.
This is much more of a smaller film, and that's one of the reasons why I am predicting it, because I think it is, if it does come out, and if it doesn't come out this year, I'll predict it for next year as well, unless we hear more about it, is I think Cooper, love him or hate him, Bradley Cooper is a guy who does not do the same thing twice. He is always switching styles up. He did A Star Is Born. Well, yes, it's a music film. It's much more of a drama and a love story, and it's about the musicians themselves. while Maestro, again, had a lot of those same feels, but much more is about the internal struggle. Yeah. And now here, he's really switching up, and it's just doing like a feel-good comedy with his buddy Will Arnett.
Yeah,
and
apparently about community theater or something like that.
And Will Arnett's spoken at heavy about this movie in the past, about how excited he is for people to see this. He's really happy with the project, and he feels like it's going great. And we know that at least Searchlight sometimes will rush their contenders. They did this with A Complete Unknown last year. Is this the same thing as A Complete Unknown? No, not whatsoever. It's just, I don't really know what else, because I'll listen to your reasoning for the other film. It's just the other film just feels too...
It feels like the Supremes in
yeah, it just feels too light and feels too much like this would be cool, but like, is it gonna happen? Yeah,
I mean, the thing with Is This Thing On, it just feels so out of Bradley Cooper's wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. He's in Noah Baumbach territory. And I would say if this happens, there's no way Jay Kelly happens at the same time, because it feels like they're the same movie.
That's what will work for it, is just showing that Cooper continues to switch styles up, and maybe he won't be a director contender here, but for screenplay, for Arnett, for editing, and then Cooper is in a supporting role. How big is that? Yeah. But they love to nominate Cooper for random things all the time. So, like, I don't know. Maybe this is a little bit too wishful thinking. It's more so of me not believing in the other contenders, because I want to include a Searchlight movie. And that's why I said I wish Searchlight bought things more often. Because, like,
or I wish they bought something at Sundance.
Yeah, of all those unknown contenders for distribution, this is the perfect home for it. And we thought that would happen last year with so many of those unknown, but Searchlight didn't buy anything. They had their movie all along, and they rushed the production, and Complete Unknown dominated.
If this is confirmed for 2025 and it's coming out this year, I will probably move it into my top 10. The reason I've got it so low is that I don't believe it is coming this year, because again, Bradley Cooper has shown he does not rush in the edit. But I'm currently going with Rental Family as my pick here. And the thing with Rental Family, yes, it seems fake. It seems like it could be the Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat. Rental Family is directed by Hikari, who is a woman who is primarily known for directing Part of Beef, but really, she directed a highly acclaimed Netflix movie in 2019-2020 called 37 Seconds. Going through sort of some of the responses that movie got, people love that film and its sort of distinct take on Japan. And what we've got here is a movie that's very cross-cultural. Brendan Fraser plays an out-of-work actor who goes over to Japan and starts playing a role. He plays a rental family member who comes in and acts for multiple different people in different ways that they need him. Mm-hmm. It sounds emotional, it sounds very lovely, very sweet, and we know one guy who went to a test screening of it and has ranked it on Letterboxd as his favorite movie of the year. It's just one guy. It might not mean anything, but to me, there's enough behind this director that I think Hikari could be the breakout sensation. It feels like this could be a SAG Ensemble nominee. I could see multiple acting nominations. This is not going to be a big tech player, but screenplay, acting, picture, I think is enough for it.
I think this film lives and dies at TIFF PCA. I'm assuming this is where it's going to go. And
TIFF makes sense for it. TIFF, Telluride.
Yeah, if this is the PCA winner, or even just top 3, because as we know, 2 of 3 usually find their way through. That's the avenue for Rental Family.
Yeah, I would want to see it in top 3.
And I think, honestly, if Is This Thing On gets confirmed 2026, I might move Rental Family into my 10. It's just, looking at the options now, I'm feeling more so towards Is This Thing On if it does come out under the implication that it could. And just to touch on the roses one more time, if this isn't had August, I would be so high for this. And maybe it defies that expectation.
There's still a chance.
Still comes through.
I don't want to write it off entirely. Because, again, Jay Roach got close with Bombshell. We know that he has the capability of making it an Oscar contender. We know that Benedict Cumberbatch and Olivia Colman are both great performers who are going to kill this. And Tony McNamara is a great writer. Mm-hmm. So all of that feels really strong. And maybe we're being thrown off by its August release.
But hey, we have in the 20s. That's higher than almost I've seen anyone else have it. A lot of people have it so
I think it's crazy to just completely write it off.
Or even before the release date announcement, people didn't have this on their things whatsoever, at least looking on awards expert.
We're talking about directors who are ripe for a breakout. Jay Roach.
Yeah.
Jay Roach is absolutely one day going to direct a Best Picture nominee.
Honestly, Bombshell probably gets into most years. Just 2019 is one of the most stacked years that we've ever had.
Yeah, Bombshell gets in last year, for sure.
Bombshell gets in every year since 2019 with the exception of the Oppenheimer year.
Yeah. Even then, no, it probably would have knocked out Past Lives.
So let's move into a studio who has a great track record when they push contenders, and usually these contenders are pretty big box office, and this is Disney, this is 20th Century. The last 8 years is what we're looking at. They've gotten 6 films in, 2 in 2018, but that was before the 2 films merged.
Yeah.
So that year was Black Panther and Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yes, when it was Fox and Disney, and now they're together.
And the really interesting thing to me is when 20th Century has a movie, because if you look at the graphic, you're going to see some years that I have really funny movies in there. Like one year's Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and the other one is The Critters, because they had nothing. You look at all those other years, those movies hit, and they hit hard. You have Avatar, you have West Side Story, you have The Post, you have Bohemian Rhapsody. So when they bring a film to the table, they don't usually flop.
Yeah.
And looking at what they have this year, they have 2, you can maybe make a case for 3, but they have 2 movies, and we've never seen them work with 2 movies. Because they have Avatar, Fire and Ash, and they have Deliver Me from Nowhere, which are 2 very different types of movies. And we've never seen them work with 2 films in the conversation, because usually it's one major film and they'll have like a tech player. So like this year we have 2 films fighting for completely different types of nominations. So can they coexist? Will they cancel each other out? Or will it just be one and the other one comes up just a little bit short?
To talk about Avatar, Fire and Ash, something that I feel with this one is we do have to start thinking at a certain point, will there be diminishing returns? There was diminishing returns from the first to the second. The first one got so many nominations, was win competitive all over the place. The second one ended up getting, 4 nominations? Wildly underperformed. And at a certain point, are people going to get tired of the series? And I have no reason to doubt James Cameron. You don't bet against James Cameron. That is the rule. From all accounts, this is going to be great. They filmed at the same time as Way of Water. It's going to be the same production quality. It's locked for visual effects, and like we were saying with F1, like you really shouldn't doubt a movie that feels locked for an award a full year out. But here's the thing, like, at a certain point, an Avatar movie has to miss, right?
And I think that's the biggest question you have to ask yourself is, I think looking here at Fire and Ash, with everything that we've said so far, my question for all of you out there is, next year or the year after that, whenever Dune Messiah comes, are you predicting it or are you having it out? And I think that these 2 films kind of work in the same thing, because they've said that there will be more after Messiah. They've said they're going to continue. It will be without Denis, but there's going to be more Dune movies. So I think that what's going to come here is going to be you could say the emotional conclusion of multiple arcs between the Avatar movies and the Dune movies. Is that enough to keep people on board for a 3rd nomination in Best Picture? You're going to have the technical nominations. Both films had a massive drop-off from the first to the second, like 50%. And the question is, I'm assuming sound, visual effects, production design, because they're going to a whole new colony. That's what got Way of Water its nomination in production design. And then maybe you could see additional nominations for like costumes, or maybe it can find its way into, miraculously enough, maybe even adaptive. There's that much story here, which James Cameron has said he's trying to do. I'm not predicting it for that, but I think that you have to look at these films in comparison. And I think just because you may love a series a little bit more than another series, when it's shown this much of a great track record, it's releasing in that prime window where it's early enough where the story is at the box office, not, well, this film is good, but it's not a 10 out of 10. That's, I think, enough to get into a Best Picture lineup of 10. The bigger question comes to how real and how strong is Deliver Me from Nowhere? Because if that hits the Fest circuit and that is the biopic of the year, I think that would kill Avatar. Not kill it entirely, but really harm it for its Best Picture nomination. But the question is, will Deliver Me from Nowhere hit Fest? A complete unknown did it last year. And if it does, is this a situation which we see year in and year out with these music biopics? Let me run you down a few of these, because I made a list. Elvis, Baz Luhrmann. A complete unknown, James Mangold. Bohemian Rhapsody was Bryan Singer, which... Is he the biggest track record of, or is he the most acclaimed director? No, but he had a track record of a lot of banger films that got Oscar nominations. They weren't always above the line, but he had been in the Academy's vision before. Now we flip to the opposite side, and you have Rocketman, which had Dexter Fletcher, which he is a director who's done stuff, but not Academy-adjacent stuff.
Well, the stuff that he had done was finishing Bohemian Rhapsody.
I'm not going to go one by one, because we have so many biopics that fail year in and year out. And usually the trend with these is they're directors have been hits.
Mm-hmm.
They've been in the limelight before with the Academy. And Scott Cooper is someone who, like, has been around, but it was his very first movie of Crazy Heart, which went on to a lead actor win, but since then, he's had 0 nominations in, like, 15 years.
And people try to predict Scott Cooper every single time, and it never happens. I love Black Mass, and I think that should have been nominated all over the place, but it wasn't. I am not going to doubt a musician biopic, but I am going to doubt Scott Cooper. That's why I have this down at number 16. I don't think Jeremy Allen White is great casting for Bruce Springsteen, and although I love the concept of this one being Around Nebraska, which is my favorite Springsteen album, Scott Cooper, it's not going to be in his wheelhouse. So I don't know.
I think it really just comes down to, when is this movie releasing? They're not putting it on Christmas like most music biopics, because Avatar's there. Unless they're doing 2 movies within like 6 days of releasing each other. For me, I think the pathway for Avatar is laid out for 20th Century, while Deliver Me From Nowhere has the potential, but it has a bigger roadblock. And I think at the end of the day, like, if this thing is real, I don't think it's going to be like that, a complete unknown Elvis thing where it's getting 10 nominations. I think it will be on the lighter side, and maybe it is still a play for its actors. Jeremy Allen White can fight for that 5th slot like Taron Egerton did for Rocketman that year. And maybe supporting actor, I would say it's more so for Stephen Graham than for Jeremy Strong, which I think is the popular pick. Jeremy Strong's playing his manager. Stephen Graham's playing his dad. I don't know a lot about Springsteen's family, but I know that him and his dad don't have the best relationship, so there's some arguing there that could happen. I mean, Stephen Graham's hot off of Adolescence. That's sure to dominate the TV circuit this year. So
totally.
A little bit of cross-promotion for each of them, but
also Emmy to Oscar.
Yeah, well, Succession boys work, I guess.
Yeah.
For me, Deliver Me From Nowhere is one of those movies, like I mentioned before, where I'm going to keep it like right on the outside in a lot of categories. At the end of the day, I think it's just something on the outside looking in for me, because there are other biopics and other music biopics that I think could just be stronger this year.
Next up, we got to talk about Sony. This is both Sony Pictures and Sony Pictures Classics. So this is going to cover both their art house branch and their mainstream branch. Now, of course, Sony Pictures Classics acquires a lot of stuff.
Yep.
It's very possible that their main contender they don't have yet. Like last year, they did not have I'm Still Here at this point. They bought that in the summertime. We don't know for sure what Sony Pictures Classics will have. But right now, Sony Pictures, it seems like their biggest contender at the moment is Caught Stealing. This is the Darren Aronofsky movie, and it doesn't feel like a player at all. It's an August release, and it's an action movie about Austin Butler as a baseball player, basically is like a fugitive. It doesn't sound like an Oscar movie at all.
It doesn't sound like an Oscar movie. It sounds like a Dylan movie, though.
Oh, yeah, you're going to love
Butler,
it.
baseball, Zoe Kravitz, Aronofsky when he's not completely crazy. Sounds cool, but yeah, awards season, the August really sets it aside, and like maybe if it's really good, something can spur for like smaller shows, like what we talked about, like for the indies, but overall, don't really think it's much.
It's not a best picture player in my mind. Same with A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, the Kogonada film, which was supposed to be a spring release. They've delayed it to the fall. That could be a good sign, but at the same time, like, it's not vibing to me as a movie that's going to be a big, serious contender. I think it's just going to be a nice little movie.
Yeah, Colin Farrell's got like the unlucky hand dealt to him this year between About a Small Player or this, and I think he's in one other movie too that all seem like they could be Oscar players, but none of them really feel like Oscar players.
Vibes just aren't there for them at this point. And maybe I'll eat my words on that, but right now I've got this at number 73.
Yeah, this one's pretty low for me. It wasn't on my list at all until it got delayed. Once it got delayed, I was like, okay, I'll throw it in the 50, but still, it's a little bit of a stretch. It is one movie that I see a lot of people online pretty high about, but to me, I don't know if that's just because it's Scarlett Johansson's directorial debut, or they love June Squibb so much they think that, I've seen some people say she could win.
What?
Fuck
off. No.
Eleanor the Great, it is one of the few things that Sony Pictures Classics currently has. Some people think it may go to Cannes.
It's going to be a sweet little movie, but it's not an Oscar thing, in my opinion.
If she couldn't get much for Thelma last year, and that had so much...
Yeah, she couldn't even get the Golden Globe nomination.
Like natural support behind it. Yes, this will have Sony Pictures behind it, but still not really sure.
There's also Blue Moon, which is the other Richard Linklater movie that's not Nouvelle Vague. And this one premiered at Berlin to very good reviews. It won an acting prize for Andrew Scott, who's in a supporting role in it. Despite the fact that I don't think it's a thing for Oscars whatsoever. Golden Globes, Ethan Hawke could be a nominee there. And totally could be. If we think like how they're going to fill a 6 in Best Comedy Actor, like
right here.
Ethan Hawke.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing this shows is if the other Linklater film is getting great buzz out of Cannes, maybe this could be a home for it because they already have his other one.
That is true, but the thing I always ask is when you have a relationship already with a studio and you're not picking up a film, it's a little odd to me.
Last year.
Queer, exactly. Like, if Amazon MGM always picks up Luca movies and they don't have this one, then why? There's also Clara and the Sun, the new Taika Waititi movie, which, I mean, it's kind of crazy that we're doubting Taika this much.
And he's not writing this one, too, so for the people who are like, oh, everyone's fed up with Taika, it's like, well, this isn't going to be Taika dialogue.
Yeah.
But it will still have the same Taika sensibilities, at least in terms of the vision. And, like, I didn't hate Next Goal Wins. I thought Next Goal Wins was a good, fine enough movie, not an awards player.
Yeah, it was just, it was a sports comedy. That's it.
So, like, this one I feel like could, if it hits, is this one Sony or is it Sony Pictures?
This is Sony.
Sony, okay. So that gives me a little less confidence in terms of awards. It's more commercial because Jenna Ortega's in it as well. Bringing back the catchphrase is believe when I see.
Yeah, it would need to make audiences really cry. Like, once I see a trailer and I'm like, okay, what's the vibe of this movie? But Kazuo Ishiguro wrote it, so I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's exciting. Yeah. That's a really interesting prospect. We've also got from Sony Pictures Classics The Coral, which they just really put a spotlight on in their press release for CinemaCon. This is directed by Nicholas Hittner, who really hasn't been in the Oscar race since the 90s. He directed The Madness of King George, which is a very good movie from 1994. But The Coral, again, it feels like an Oscar contender of days gone by. Doesn't feel like the type of thing that gets in now. And lastly, I think it's worth mentioning, despite the fact that this feels so opposite of an Oscar movie, it's a zombie movie releasing in the summertime, 28 years later. I mean, that trailer looks phenomenal.
The trailer looks great. I think that this could be like a surprise, like shortlist mention in a lot of categories. Yeah. How we always have like that one blockbuster that somehow finds its way to like 3 or 4 shortlists. Does it get all those nominations? No, but like I think it could end up being in that like 10 range. How we always talk about Wes Anderson movies where they don't get the nom, but they're in the conversation because they get precursors. I feel like this, like you said, makeup, maybe cinematography because of the way they're shooting the film.
Imagine an iPhone movie being in cinematography.
Because like crazy. I don't think it'll get the nomination, but I think it could hit a precursor or something.
So we're gonna move to our last grouping, and we're gonna put a bunch of studios together here because all these studios have such poor performance that we can kind of group them together without really making a big difference. But Paramount, Apple, Lionsgate, MUBI, here's the track record for all of them, but we're gonna go studio by studio anyways. So let's start off with Lionsgate. Their last Best Picture nominee was La La Land. So they are currently 0 for 8 in the past 8 years. Oh, I will actually say, I gotta correct myself. Their last, in 2016, they had 3 nominees that year.
Okay, so they did really good. They use it up all too soon.
Yeah.
This year they have Michael and they have Kiss of the Spider-Woman. 2 films that have giant red flags for them.
Yes.
But also, I could listen to a reason why you could have either one of these 2 movies in. One a lot more so than the other. So let's talk about Michael. This is one that I think, on paper, there is 0 reason to believe that this can't happen. Regardless of what people say, whenever this thing comes out, it is going to dominate the box office and be the topic of conversation. Now, is that topic going to be praise or hatred? We don't really know. But,
I think it's going to be both.
I think being both is kind of what you need to get a nomination because Joker was all negative.
Yes.
That's what killed it. Amelia Perez was both, and that's what continued to help it soar. Michael Jackson is the biggest star the world has ever seen.
Yes.
And you can have your opinions on his music, or you can have your thoughts about the legality stuff around him. But I think at the end of the day, that's not going to play a major factor in terms of the film's performance, both from general audiences, both from the box office, and I think ultimately in awards season. Because there was the giant report about the reshoots. There's also been reports contradicting it, saying it wasn't that bad. It's just how much you want to buy into them. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, that is what makes or breaks Michael, is does Lionsgate know what they're doing?
Yeah.
If they know what they're doing, at least just a little bit, I think this movie's too big to fail. But if Lionsgate pulls what Lionsgate's done since La La Land, which seems to be the track record, this one is one that you may want to stay away from.
So for me, I think even if this movie is a total piece of shit, it still gets in for Best Actor, Supporting Actor, Casting, and Costumes. I have a very hard time seeing a Michael Jackson movie be such a flop that it doesn't do that. But the issue that I'm having right now is the fact that it's a heavily influenced by the estate of Michael Jackson movie They want to paint the best picture of him possible. For a Michael Jackson movie to be a massive success, a massive sensation, to make all the money in the world, all you need to do is play the hits. Play the hits and money will pour in. We don't know if these reports are correct, but just hearing all over the place that they are focusing heavily, and that apparently the last 45 minutes of the movie was all set around the court case, because apparently really what they want to do is prove that Michael Jackson's innocent. No one wants to hear that in a Michael Jackson movie. The people who are fully on Team Michael and don't believe any of it, they don't want to hear that in the movie. They don't want you to bring up Michael Jackson touching kids in a movie. And the people who believe that he did it, they also don't want that. No one wants that in the movie. No one wants that. Who is that choice for? And so to hear that they're really trying to dramatize that whole element of the Michael Jackson story, if that's true, that's the only way this flops in the box office. And it could be Whitney. I mean, Whitney Houston is a huge star, but I Want to Dance with Somebody was nothing. That did not do a damn thing. And there's still a chance that Michael is I Want to Dance with Somebody.
Going back to the comparison that I made to Deliver Me From Nowhere earlier in terms of director, Antoine Fuqua.
What do we Training Day. Training Day is the only time.
What do we have to work with? So, I think that is another factor working against this movie. And this is one that is so interesting to try to gauge of its future prospects, because the red flag with it, we don't know how much of it is real.
Yeah. I want to ask this question. Would a modern Academy go for Bohemian Rhapsody?
Yes.
Because A Complete Unknown, I would argue, is a much more artful version of the biopic formula.
I mean, Elvis just happened.
But that's also, it's Baz Luhrmann, and it's heightened and it's unique. Is it just enough to just play the hits?
I think if you're a big enough star, it is enough to play just the hits, because I think the thing that really made Bohemian Rhapsody real was the fact that Rami Malek was such a force in that award season, for better or for worse.
Right.
I think if Rami Malek
Jackson
wasn't winning that season, I think that you could make a case for Bohemian Rhapsody to play like Black Panther Wakanda Forever, where it gets the text, but it maybe misses out above the line.
That's a little bit what I'm thinking for Michael, where I think that this could be getting sound, getting all of, it could be right on the edge for editing, but I still feel like there's going to be movies that they like more.
Their other film, Kiss of the Spider-Woman, which, when it had its premiere, so many pundits were like, this is the real deal, it's happening. And then 3 days later, the buzz seemed to go away, and 3 weeks later, the movie still hadn't sold, and then now it sells to Lionsgate for $30 million.
$30 million!
So,
what are they doing?
What were they asking ahead of time that was too expensive? J-Lo can drive box office, but, this movie also doesn't seem like the type that a lot of people want to go out to see, and I feel like...
I'll be there, front row.
I feel like at the end of the season, it really just comes down to how strong is Jennifer Lopez actually inside this film. If this goes the way of, what was that film last year, Unbreakable? That people are like, J-Lo Oscar vehicle, and it does nothing. The movie never gets off the ground.
This is also a musical based on a musical by the same people that did Chicago, that did Cabaret, and the reviews aren't bad for it. It's just they're not raves.
Yeah.
If it was a real contender, someone would have bought it a lot faster than they did.
And if this ends up being a real contender, I would suppose there's some tech support behind it, because it's been described as a throwback musical to the style you're talking about, Chicago, where it could have a lot of technical nominations just come with it because of the type of movie it is. It just goes back to the Lionsgate question. Does Lionsgate know what they're doing? We haven't seen them have a contender that they're even trying to push since La La Land. And I mean, you bring up that stat of the La La Land year. They got 3 movies in. They know what they're doing when they have the movies. It's just they haven't had the movies. Are these 2 movies that they can push?
So over in Paramount,
they don't know what they're doing.
Paramount doesn't know what they're doing, but Paramount has gotten 1 Best Picture nominee in the last 8 years, and that was Top Gun Maverick.
They are unlike Lionsgate. They have a contender every year. That contender just fails
constantly
for whatever reason. Yeah. And the only year they got in, their movie that they came to the season with failed. Babylon.
Yeah, Babylon
didn't get in, but they got Maverick in. And
Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. I mean, we know visual effects, we know sound. That happened for the last one. It's likely happening for this one.
It was so weird to happen for the last one, though. So, it's one of those things where it's probably easy just to pencil in, but then at the same time, it's
also, it's the farewell to Tom Cruise in the series. There's a finality to it.
It's just I see people trying to go higher. I don't see higher. I think that is the ceiling. Maybe, I guess, editing, if they revert back to a year where they throw in a blockbuster in the editing field, but
I mean, I don't know. Like, if this is a huge movie, a huge sensation, we could get the sort of Tom Cruise love. Although I think next year's the Tom Cruise year.
With gearing up, and that's Warner Brothers. So, talking about they don't have a real contender this year.
Yeah.
Because you could make that case, not to get too far off track, that Warner Brothers' movie this year move to next year. Now they're like, what do we do with number one? And just staying with Paramount, though, we have Roofman. This one sounds so interesting, so intriguing to me.
Yeah, it's a cool story, but it doesn't feel like a movie story.
Yeah, Channing Tatum, he's one of my favorite actors. Would love to see him get an award season type role. Is it this one?
Yeah,
Maybe
about
not so much.
a guy who steals from McDonald's and hides on the roof.
It seems like it would be like a great like limited series, like 4
Yeah.
episodes,
Or like a limited documentary series or
yeah,
something
but
like that.
it's a movie. It's coming from Paramount.
Jarek Cianfrance did it. He should have been in the conversation for like Blue Valentine or Place Beyond the Pines, and then he kind of just disappeared. So like, what happened to him?
And I guess to wrap up with Paramount, we have The Running Man. Edgar Wright is back. At least this time, people aren't projecting for him to win Best Picture like they did last time with Last Night in Soho. But this time, he's got Glenn Powell.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's coming out the same day as Wicked, so I'm sure when we get like trailers and stuff, people are like, oh yeah, it's this year's Gladiator 2. It's going to happen, guys, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and then we've got Apple. They have 2 picture nominees and 1 win in the past 8 years, but they're clearly not amazing contenders. And also, like, it's what we've been saying. We don't know how to judge, like, what is more of an Apple movie and what is more of their partner's movie. Is F1 Warner Brothers or is it Apple? But this year, we have The Lost Bus, which seems to just be Apple. Paul Greengrass doing a story about wildfires. And I guess there's something to be said about, could a movie about wildfires, could that speak to Hollywood this year?
My big holdback is Paul Greengrass, because, like, News of the World had the platform to really dominate, and
it didn't.
Really didn't. And this one's coming from Apple. This is an Apple exclusive, so this is like this is
like Blitz.
Maybe this can be like a sound player if they're driving through fires. There's gonna be stuff there,
Maybe.
but I'm not feeling great for above the line stuff. And the last one is another one where you could say this is A24.
It could be A24.
Highest to lowest, Spike Lee. Spike Lee movies, when they hit, they usually have something more to them. There doesn't seem like there's much more to this, at least up front.
This is closer to Inside Man than it is to Black Klansman or Defy Bloods. Highest to lowest is one of my most anticipated of the year. Spike Lee is my favorite filmmaker of all time, but you know, he's not an Oscar filmmaker. I don't expect him to win Oscars, and he's not interested in that type of thing. And then our last one to talk about is MUBI, because obviously, I mean, we could usually rewrite them off, but last year they really proved themselves with substance. So they have 1 picture nominee total, but, you know, last year...
Yep, and it was a pretty strong one, too.
They've got 3 contenders right now, and they're going to pick up more. At Cannes, they're going to be probably one of the ones that snags up some of the big players. But right now, they've got The History of Sound, which is the follow-up from Oliver Hermanis, who did Living. So he's really primed for a big moment. And The History of Sound sounds like a really beautiful movie.
Living was a film that very much appealed to a certain demo, and outside that demo, it kind of struggled at places that I went to throughout the award circuit. And I feel like the same thing could happen for The History of Sound, but I would say more so in this film's favor is, one, it is set inside a wartime, so you're going to have some more historical relevance to it. People may be have a little bit of extra eyes, some technical stuff, because, I mean, the movie's about sound, so there could be some interesting sound work they're doing. You have 2 acting contenders, so Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor. Who's lead, who's supporting? We'll figure that out here shortly. And, I mean, this is the film, I would say, more so than each of their other films that those 2 actors have that would be the vehicle for them. It's just, can movie do it again? And I think the big thing for the substance was that was like the People's Champ of the year.
Oh, totally was the People's Champ. And I think
History of Sound's not going to be the People's Champ.
The thing with MUBI, they have to work like A24, where they have to let the audience tell them what is the movie that they want to push.
That will be the interesting thing going forward. So when MUBI has a film that feels like a Best Picture contender, how do they do with it? Do they stumble like Paramount, or do they succeed like Neon? I mean, like last year's Substance, I think that A24 comparison is great, because A24, a lot of the times, they just happen to have films that people do a lot of the online campaigning for.
And that's what Substance was.
So it will be interesting to see this year if these are their contenders. Can they do it without the internet being like,
I don't think they can. But they've also got The Mastermind, which is from Kelly Reichardt, which
She's someone who is a very interesting filmmaker. I don't think she's ever going to make an Oscar movie,
Mm-hmm.
but The Mastermind is probably the closest she'll ever be. It's an art heist movie set during the Vietnam War, starring Josh O'Connor. It sounds like an interesting movie. But at the same time, it's Kelly Reichardt, and she does stuff like Showing Up and First Cow.
Yeah, and
It's not Oscar stuff.
And I know this is somewhat contradictory coming from me from some of my propositions throughout this episode, but like Reichert had that opportunity in the First Cow year where that was the critics' darling of the year and still struggled to connect. And while this film may not be as isolating as that film was, if she couldn't break through at least somewhere for that, it's hard for me to see her breaking through with a film that most likely is not going to get the same rapturous acclaim as that film has.
She's a great filmmaker, but she's not concerned with people's opinion of her. In a similar way, I think that Lynn Ramsey and Kelly Reichardt are exactly the same.
Yeah.
They're not interested in what people think of their work. They're just singular. That kind of brings us to the end of this video.
So
We've got
many
our full
movies.
list.
We've gone over so many movies.
This is like 3 hours.
Yeah, we went through every studio, so I think that's the original and interesting aspect of this video is sort by the timestamps down below. Find the studio that you don't know what to do with. We present you with the options. Hopefully, if you made this far in the video, that you received this video pretty good.
Woo!
We would love to know your 10 nominees for Best Picture. I guess this is 11 months in advance. It's not quite 12 months in advance like last year, but 11 months in advance before any festivals or any real news comes out. Make sure to subscribe, leave a like. It helps the channel grow, keeps you involved because we have acting predictions coming up and we have director, screenplay, and we'll give you our full 5 of casting.
So thank you so much for watching. As always, my name's Matt.
My name's Dyl, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.